We are starting from chapter 840. I will start new series on this channel really soon, so consider subscribing the channel. With that in mind, let's start the video. Evan took out the dusty paper from the storage ring, and just as he expected, it was a map. Is this a treasure map? Evan muttered in a curious voice and looked at the map. This underscore, and the moment he looked at the map, his eyes opened wide in shock and a serious look appeared on his face. The map was divided into 3 parts and was very easy to understand. After looking at the map for a few seconds, Evan took out the map of the plain ground that Team Black created and compared it to the third part of the dusty map. After comparing the maps for a few minutes, he took a deep breath and said in a trembling voice, This is definitely the map of the entire Tomb of the Ancient. The map Evan found in the ring was the map of the Tomb of the Ancient, and unlike the map created by Team Black, the map he found in the ring was of the entire tomb. From the third layer to the first, the map had all the details about the tomb. Unlike Team Black, who marked every single treasure or artifact that they found on the map Evan found in the ring only had 3 things marked on it. He didn't know about the 2 things, but one of the things that was marked on the map was something that could make anyone drool in excitement. Evan looked at the top part of the map that represents the first layer of the tomb and saw a cross mark with something written on top of it. Just by reading what was written on top of it, Evan's blood started to boil in excitement. Time liquid, he muttered in a low voice as he carefully looked at the words written on the map. Other than the time liquid, one more place was marked in the third layer, and when he read the words written above the marked place, for some reason, his entire soul trembled as if urging him to go there as soon as possible. Core altar. Evan muttered the words written on the marked location and felt a strange feeling growing inside his heart. A feeling of excitement, anxiety, and most importantly, a feeling of amusement, as if he just found something funny. What the hell is going on? Evan took a few deep breaths to calm down his boiling feelings and shook his head. His gaze lingered on the words, Core Altar, for a few more seconds before he stopped looking at it and shifted his gaze to the area that represents the second layer of the tomb. On the map that represents the second area, the third place was marked, and Evan knew that place very well. Isn't this the place where the cave I entered is located? Evan muttered with a frown on his face and looked at the words written on top of the marked place. Octavius's nest. Evan's face turned strange when he saw what was written on the map as he couldn't understand what it meant by Octavius's nest. Wait a second. Suddenly, something clicked in Evan's mind and his eyes narrowed. If I remember correctly, Cedar told me that the terrain of the tomb never remains the same. Each time the tomb opens, its entire terrain changes randomly. Evan muttered and looked at the dusty map in his hands. If the terrain of the tomb changes randomly, then how is it possible for this map to be similar to the current terrain of the tomb? Just by looking at the condition of the map, Evan could tell that it was created a long time ago, and if it was created in the past, then how come the map matched the current terrain of the tomb that was randomly decided? Could it be that the person who made the map had the ability to see the future? Evan muttered with a strange look on his face and felt his head spinning. Just what the fuck is going on? First I got trapped in this shitty place, and now this map. Evan said while rubbing his eyebrows and felt a massive headache. He looked at the area that represents the third layer, and saw there was no mark in the third layer. There was just a normal map of the third layer that shows the plain ground and other areas of the third layer. This is getting weird, Evan said with a sigh as he looked at the map in his hands. After looking at the map for a few minutes, Evan once again sighed and shook his head. There is no point in thinking about how this map can match the current terrain of the tomb. He said and looked at the area of the first layer, specifically speaking, the area where the core altar was marked. I need to get out of here, Evan said and put away the map inside his shadow storage along with the ancient alchemy chest and the destruction lightning ball. After putting them away, he stood up and started to look for a way out once again. Unfortunately, even after 10 more hours, he didn't find anything that could help him escape from the dark place. Just what the fuck is this place? Evan shouted in an anger-filled voice and punched the ground, making the area around him shudder. Fuck it, if I can't find an exit, I will just destroy this entire place, Evan said in a cold voice and was about to summon all of his shadow undeads. But just before he could summon his shadow undeads, freewebnovel.com. All the participants have arrived. Starting the third trial, Evan heard the same voice inside his head, and his body began to disappear from the dark place. Evan was taken aback when he heard the voice, but he soon regained his senses and focused on the words that he heard. Participants. Evan thought and narrowed his eyes. Could it be that I will have to compete with other people to pass the third trial? The silver light around Evan intensified and with a flash, he disappeared from the dark space. After being teleported away from the dark space, Evan found himself standing at the top of a 100-meter-high wooden structure that looked like an archery tower. He looked around him and saw that he was in a place similar to a baseball stadium. The wooden tower he was on was located on the east side of the stadium, and upon closer inspection, he noticed 3 more wooden towers in the other 3 directions of the stadium. What is this place? Evan asked while looking around in confusion, but suddenly, he felt something and glanced at the wooden tower on the west side of the stadium. Someone is coming, Evan said inwardly when he felt space fluctuations coming from the top of the wooden tower, and in the next second, an elf with silver-colored hair and golden eyes appeared there. The elf was wearing a black golden robe with red embroidery, but for some reason, his entire robe was tattered as if he just fought a tough battle. That Fu King bastard, instead of an alternative to skip the trial, it was definitely a trap to kill people. Walter spoke in an anger-filled voice as he thought about what happened earlier. Just as he was thinking about the recent events, Walter felt a gaze on him. He lifted his head and looked in the direction of the gaze, and upon looking in that direction, he saw a gray-haired man with a lazy face looking at him with a weird expression. Seeing Evan, Walter's eyes opened wide in shock, but soon his shock turned into deep hatred because all the things that happened to him were because of Evan. If he hadn't stolen the nether plant from me, I wouldn't have to go through all this sh*t, Walter said while gritting his teeth. When Evan saw how Walter was looking at him, he showed him a kind smile and nodded his head as if he was greeting an old friend. Walter nearly coughed out blood due to anger when he saw Evan's attitude, and his anger intensified. Evan didn't care about the way Walter was looking at him because he knew. The silver-haired elf couldn't do anything to him. What the hell is this tower? Why can't I leave it? Walter shouted in anger as he tried to leave the tower to teach Evan a lesson but couldn't leave its area. Son, I know you are excited to see your father, but you don't have to act like this. We will have plenty of time to talk once this trial ends, Evan said in a gentle voice, looking at Walter with mocking eyes. You fu cur. Walter gritted his teeth in anger when he heard Evan. Evan wanted to continue to provoke Walter, but suddenly the tower on the north side of the stadium flashed and a person appeared there. Evan and Walter stopped arguing and looked towards the tower. Upon looking at the wooden tower, they saw a bulky man nearly 4 meters tall, wearing a full-plate golden armor with many dents on it standing at the top of the tower. Momin, you bastard. When Walter saw Momin, his eyes flashed with anger and he gritted his teeth even harder. It seems something happened between them after I left, Evan thought to himself when he saw Walter's reaction. At the same time, he noticed Momin's eyes were not blood red anymore, and the aura around him was more natural unlike before. So he regained his senses. Evan looked at Momin with interest, thinking about how he was acting like a puppet when he saw him last time. After appearing at the top of the wooden tower, Momin looked around him and when he saw Walter's hateful eyes, he just sneered and didn't care. Yo, big guy, you came back to your senses. Momin suddenly heard an amused voice and saw a gray-haired man looking at him with a small smile on his face. Momin looked at Evan for a few seconds and then completely ignored him. Evan's face stiffened when he saw this and he didn't like Momin's attitude. It was not that he was angry because Momin ignored him, he just felt irritated because Momin was the one who attacked him during the second trial, and now he was acting as if he didn't care about him at all. It seems I will have to teach some manners to this fatty. Evan thought inwardly and was about to turn on his bullshit mode that could make even a stone spit out blood in irritation but stopped because the last wooden tower located in the south direction lit up. Evan, Walter, and Momin looked towards the last tower, and their eyes opened wide in shock when they saw the person who appeared there. What is she doing here? Walter and Momin thought at the same time as they looked at the beautiful woman with shoulder-length black hair, wearing a fiery red dress and a star mark at the center of her forehead standing at the top of the tower. Big sister, you are here as well. The atmosphere that turned silent due to Blaze's arrival was broken by a playful voice. Blaze's body stiffened when she heard the voice, and the hateful image of a gray-haired man immediately came to her mind. Slowly, she turned her head in the direction of the sound and saw a lazy-looking guy with a hateful smile on his face. Dead man. Blaze gritted her teeth when she saw Evan's hateful smile and her face darkened. Thinking about the events that happened in the last few days and the tens of people who came after her in Voidscar because of the misunderstanding caused by Evan, Blaze's entire body started to shake. Sister, take a deep breath and calm down. I know you are excited to see your lovely brother, but there is no need to lose control over your emotions. Evan said in a gentle voice when he saw Blaze's entire body shaking after seeing him. Cough. Blaze coughed out blood due to anger upon hearing Evan and looked at him as if she were looking at her lifelong enemy. Evan completely ignored Blaze's hostile gaze and continued with the same gentle smile on his face. You know, you come at a very good time. Let me introduce you to your nephew. Walter was observing Evan and Blaze's interaction with a puzzled look on his face, but his expression darkened when he heard Evan's words. Sister, meet my son, Silverhead. As Walter expected, Evan pointed towards him and introduced him with an elderly smile on his face. Although your nephew may look like a dumb donkey, he is quite smart, so don't think badly of him, all right. Blaze turned her head towards Walter and saw similar to her, his face was also completely red due to anger. For a moment, she felt as if she was looking at her comrade in pain. Ha ha ha, look at yourself in a mirror, my son. Your face is completely red. Don't tell me you are embarrassed. I know your aunt is quite beautiful, but there is no need to feel embarrassed. Go ahead and say hello to her. You might not know this, but your aunt is a supreme chicken who can spit out chicken flame. So, if you say hello to her and she likes you, she might spit out her chicken flame on you, making you stronger through nirvana. Cough cough. Walter and Blaze once again coughed out and tried their best to keep their sanity. Momin looked at everything with his eyes wide open and couldn't understand what kind of skill Evan was using to make Walter and Blaze cough out their blood. Is he using spiritual skill or something similar to harm them? Momin asked himself and thought about using his spiritual senses to uncover the mystery. But before he could uncover the mystery, ha ha ha, it's my first time seeing such a strange family. All of them heard a loud laughter and someone appeared in the middle of the stadium. Chapter 842. Ha 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 ha, it's my first time seeing such a strange family. Evan and the others suddenly heard a booming laughter, followed by the amused voice of an old man and saw at some point, a thin-bodied man in his 60s, wearing a long white robe appeared in the middle of the stadium. Evan and the others instantly went on high alert when they saw the old man because no one had sensed his presence before he attracted their attention. You are a very lucky person, young man, the old man said while looking at Evan in admiration. You have a son who is very talented and will definitely become a high-level core evolver, and a sister who is a flaming sheik, I mean a phoenix. Blaze looked at the man with lifeless eyes, her face literally saying, you were about to call me a flaming chicken as well, right? The old man once again coughed when he noticed Blaze's lifeless look and wisely ignored it. As someone who always wanted to have a good talented family but died before accomplishing that dream, I really envy you for having such a talented family, the old man said in a sad voice and sighed heavily. Walter and Blaze wanted to retort that they were not this bastard family but didn't say anything when they saw the old man lost in his own world. Other than Evan, Blaze, Walter, and Momin had an idea about the identity of the old man, and according to the records they read, the old man's personality was quite unique, and they did not want to attract his attention for no reason. Family, huh? The old man came out of his thoughts when he heard Evan's voice and saw him looking at Walter and Blaze with a gentle smile on his face. Blaze and Walter cringed when they saw Evan's gentle smile and felt like throwing up. I wish I also had a son and sister like them. If I had someone like them, I might have become a rank 6 core evolver by refining their bodies and taking their talent for myself. The old man muttered in envy when he saw Evan looking at Blaze and Walter with a gentle smile. The gentle smile on Evan's face stiffened when he heard the old man's muttering and he looked at him with his eyes wide open. Sorry, but can you repeat what you just said? Evan spoke to the old man while trying his best to keep a straight face. The old man looked at Evan in confusion and repeated himself. I said if I had a talented son and sister like them, I might have crossed the boundary of rank 5 and become a rank 6 core evolver by taking their talent for myself. What the fuck is this bastard talking about? Evan wasn't shocked when heard the old man. Yes, he wasn't shocked. Calling it shock would be an understatement, because he was freaking out, literally speaking. Earlier, when he heard the old man talking about how he always wanted to have a good family, He thought this guy was someone like an old grandpa who lives next door and treats kids with cheap candies. But after hearing what he just said, that impression went to gutter. Don't tell me this old man wanted a good family so that he can take away their talent for himself using a demonic method. Evan started to sweat when he realized this and looked at Walter and others. When he looked at Walter and others, he saw they were not surprised hearing the old man, which only meant one thing. They already have information about this man. Evan said inwardly and felt like cursing because he was clearly at a disadvantage here due to his lack of knowledge about the man. All right, there is no point in talking about the past. I am already dead and can't create a talented family anymore. The old man suddenly said and clapped his hands. Let's start the last trial and end this sh*t once and for all. The moment the old man clapped his hands, a transparent cube flashing with different colors of light appeared in front of him. FW shish. The moment the transparent cube appeared, a strange aura engulfed the surroundings. This underscore, Evan narrowed his eyes when he felt the aura released by the cube as it was the same aura that he felt outside of the cave. What are these different colors of light flashing inside the cube? Evan muttered in a low voice as he looked at the different colors of lights flashing inside the cube like a disco ball. The eyes of Blaze, Walter, and Moment flashed with greed when they saw the cube, and a look of desire appeared on their faces. Evan raised an eyebrow when he noticed the change in Blaze's and others' expressions and understood they knew something about the cube. The old man nodded his head in satisfaction upon seeing the greed-filled eyes of Blaze and others. I know all of you are here because of this, but know that it is not easy to get this thing, the old man said while looking at the cube and was about to continue when he heard Evan's voice. What is this thing? Hearing Evan, the old man and the others looked at him with strange looks on their faces. Young man, don't tell me you don't know about this thing. The old man asked while pointing at the cube. No, forget about this thing. Do you know who I am? Hearing the old man, Evan just looked at him with an expression that was saying, who are you? Seriously, you don't know me. You don't know about the great Octavius. The old man looked at Evan with a baffled expression on his face, as if he had just witnessed something impossible. Seeing that Evan really didn't know anything about him, the old man's body started to shake, and a dangerous aura started to come out of his body. Blaze, Walter, and Moment looked at Evan with pity-filled eyes as if he were a dead man. Evan obviously noticed the change in the old man's aura, but he completely ignored it because the moment the old man released his aura, Evan felt something and his gaze shifted towards the cube that was hovering in front of the old man. That cube. Evan's eyes glowed for a moment and he used the Eyes of the Abyss ability of Gobu to examine the cube. Holy sh*t. The moment Evan looked at the cube using the Eyes of the Abyss, a shocked expression appeared on his face. So that's how it is, huh? But the shocked look on his face soon disappeared, and his lips arched upwards. Let's see how long you keep up this act. Evan said to himself and activated one of his skills just for a split second. The moment Evan activated the skill, the dangerous aura the old man was releasing instantly disappeared and he looked at Evan with terror-filled eyes. Seeing the terror-filled look of the old man, a sadistic smile appeared on Evan's face that sent a shiver down the old man's spine. What happened? Blaze, Moment, and Walter thought simultaneously when they noticed the dangerous aura Octavius was emitting suddenly disappeared, and a horror-filled look appeared on his face. They glanced at Evan and saw a wide smile on his face. A smile that Blaze and Walter were very familiar with. He is not going to mess with this guy as well, right? Even he won't be that bizarre, right? Right. Blaze and Walter thought at the same time because they didn't want to attract Octavius's attention, but Evan's next words shattered their hope. Old man, you said your name is Octavius, right? How is this possible? Was it my imagination? He's just a mid-level rank 1 core evolver, there's no way he can do something like that. Old man, are you listening? Yes, it must have been my imagination. Only that guy can do something like that. Other than him, there is no one else who can do that thing. Listen to me when I'm talking to you, you old fart. Suddenly, Evan shouted loudly and for a split second, he once again activated the same skill he had activated earlier. Feeling the same sense of danger and hearing Evan's loud voice, the old man came back to his senses and nodded his head like a chicken. No, it's not my imagination, he can really use that thing. The old man started to sweat like a pig who was about to be slaughtered and gulped down his saliva when he realized his situation. Evan ignored the horror-filled look of the old man and once again asked the same question. Your name is Octavius, right? freewebnovel.com. Yes, the old man nodded cautiously. Hearing the old man, Evan rubbed his chin and suddenly, a look of realization flashed on his face. Now that I think about it, my great-grandfather's name was also Octavius. Blaze and Walter's faces trembled when they heard Evan, and they looked at the old man with expressions that seemed to say, "Welcome to the family, old man." Although I never met my great-grandfather in person, I once saw him in my dream, and his face was very similar to yours. Is that so? The old man's voice trembled as he sensed a very bad feeling from the way Evan was talking. Old man, was your son's name James? Octavius shook his head. His name was Lucian. Oh really, what a coincidence, my grandfather's name was also Lucian. Now I am 100% sure you are my great-grandfather. Shameless bastard. Walter, Momin and Blaze nearly choked on their breaths and looked at Evan with their mouth agape. Hearing Evan's words, the old man opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. What kind of nonsense is this bastard talking about? I killed my son when he was 5 years old, so how can he have a grandson like you? Octavius shouted inwardly and felt like slapping Evan to death. You stupid bastard son, what are you doing? Your great-great-grandfather is in front of you. Why are you not greeting him? Evan suddenly looked at Walter and spoke in a serious tone. And you, sister, why are you spacing out? Aren't you happy to see our great-grandfather? Blaze and Walter, who had been observing everything with blank expressions on their faces, snapped back to reality upon hearing Evan's voice and looked at Octavius with disbelief written all over their faces. They couldn't understand why Octavius was tolerating Evan's bizarre behavior. Octavius also observed his supposed fake descendants Walter and Blaze and felt a deep sense of camaraderie with them. It was as if he was looking at individuals who shared the same pain as him. Seeing Octavius gazing at them, Blaze and Walter were unsure of how to react. They were clueless about what was going on between Evan and Octavius, so they were unsure whether to call the old man grandfather or not. Well, it seems you guys are still in shock. That's understandable. After all, who would have thought that we would meet one of our family members here? Evan said with a sigh and shook his head when Blaze and Walter remained quiet. Though there were many things that Walter, Blaze, and Octavius wanted to say upon hearing Evan's words, they decided to stay silent because all of them knew that arguing with Evan would only give them more headaches. Now, before we proceed with the trial and you tell me more about that cube. Evan turned to Momin, who had been observing the family drama with interest. We should take care of those who are not part of our family. That guy is the biggest variable here. I don't know what his connection with that cube is, but if what I saw through the eyes of the abyss is true, then I need to send him away as soon as possible, or this old man will swallow all of us. Contrary to Evan's outward playful expression, he was deadly serious inside and his mind was running at full speed, thinking about his next course of action. When Momin heard what Evan said and felt his gaze on himself, a sense of foreboding washed over him. Great-grandpa, don't you think family matters should stay within the family? That man isn't part of the family, so he shouldn't be allowed to take part in this trial. Why don't you kick him out of here? Evan suggested in a serious voice. What? Momin's eyes widened in shock when he heard Evan and he looked at him with disbelief evident on his face. Even a 4-year-old child could tell that Evan had no real connection with Octavius and was just playing around. Momin was utterly perplexed as to why Octavius, known as one of the most evil beings in the world, was playing along with Evan. I don't think that's a good idea. We won't be able to start the trial without him. Even though I am your great-grandfather, I can't bend the rules for you. This trial was created to find a suitable heir for my knowledge and this item, Octavius explained, pointing at the cube in front of him. So, even though I also wish to keep these matters within the family, I can't do so because of the rules. Momin sighed in relief upon hearing Octavius. The way Evan was speaking to the old man, he really thought that he would be kicked out of the trial without being able to take part in it. I don't know what is going on between them, but I won't forget this thing, Momin said inwardly as he looked at Evan with narrowed eyes because he didn't like the fact that Evan wanted to kick him out of the trial. You can't do that because of the rules, huh? Evan said in a voice filled with disdain and sneered inwardly. If I didn't have the eyes of the abyss ability of Gobu, I would have believed you, but now I already know what you are planning, Evan said to himself and showed a smile to the old man, a smile that sent shivers down the old man's spine. Great-grandpa, I really admire you. Even for your family, you Are not willing to bend the rules so that everyone can compete fairly, Evan said in a voice filled with admiration, but suddenly, his eyes turned sinister and he said in a cold voice, "But great. Grandpa, your descendant is not as good as you. I am a selfish bastard who can do anything to get my hands on the things that I want." Evan looked at Octavius with piercing eyes and said in a voice that sent a chill run down the old man's spine. "So I hope that you bend the rule for me, otherwise, I might do something that I would regret for the rest of my life." Gulp. Octavius visibly gulped when he saw Evan's cold eyes, and when he remembered the feeling he had when Evan activated his skill, his entire body shook. He looked at Momum with eyes filled with regret and sighed inwardly. "It was such a good chance for me, but alas. I don't know what this demon will do if I don't listen to him." "You are right, things related to family should stay in the family," Octavius said and snapped his finger. The moment he snapped his finger, Momin's body started to disappear from the wooden tower. Evan looked at the scene using the eyes of the abyss ability and nodded his head. "Wait, you can't do this to me. I completed the tasks that yo." Before Momin could finish speaking, his body disappeared from the wooden tower. "Tasks, huh?" Evan thought about the words that Momin spoke before he disappeared and his suspicion grew even stronger. Now, once Momum was kicked out by Octavius, Evan said out loud to attract everyone's attention. "Now that the person who wasn't part of the family is kicked out, let's start the last trial." Octavius sighed in relief when he heard Evan and raised his hand. "To complete the third." "Wait a second, now what?" Octavius looked at Evan in irritation when he was suddenly stopped by him. Evan just smiled when he saw the old man's irritated face and didn't care about him. "Before you tell us what to do, I want to say something." Octavius didn't say anything upon hearing Evan and continued to look at him, waiting for him to speak further. "I want to say that." Suddenly, Evan's body started to change. His gray-colored hair turned pitch black, his ears grew larger and turned pointy. His lazy-looking face disappeared and became quite handsome, and a demonic aura appeared around him. "Fu ku in your trial." Octavius's eyes opened wide in horror when he saw Evan's real appearance, and he took a step back with a shocked look on his face. "Oh, how is this possible? Why is this guy so cautious? It's not like anyone would dare to attack him in his territory." A beautiful woman with long black hair grumbled in annoyance as she walked through a dense forest. The woman's black eyes were glowing brightly and her irises were star-shaped, slowly spinning. "Damn, another trap." The woman suddenly stopped walking and sighed while looking at a small formation on the ground with her glowing eyes. "For God's sake, that guy is a rank 6 core evolver with millions of monsters under his command, so why does he act like a coward?" Anastasia said in an irritated voice and smashed the formation with a ball of black energy, completely isolating it from the outside world. Once the formation was isolated, Anastasia walked past it and continued moving deeper. "If I hadn't left most of my powers with the essence clone in the Shadow Realm, I would have already stormed this entire place," Anastasia muttered in a low voice as thoughts of destroying the forest crossed her mind. 2 hours later, Anastasia was looking at a small mountain in front of her with dead eyes. Through her special eyes, she could see that the mountain was covered in thousands of different kinds of runes. Instead of a mountain, it was more accurate to call it a war fortress. "All right, I've had enough of this nonsense." Suddenly, a frightening aura left Anastasia's body and covered an area of thousands of kilometers. Though she left most of her powers with the essence clone in the Shadow Realm, the pressure released by the progenitor of the Shadow Dragons was still powerful enough to shake the center area of the Dark Forest. "Alaric, don't try to push your luck. Do you think I don't know what you are trying to do?" Anastasia said in a cold voice as dark energy started to come out of her body. "I was playing your game because I don't want to start a needless conflict, but if you continue to act like a piece of sh*t, I don't mind." Whoosh! Anastasia didn't get to finish her words when the mountain in front of her suddenly disappeared, and a portal appeared there. The angry female dragon looked at the portal with the same cold eyes, and after a few seconds, the dark aura that was coming out of her started to disappear. "You should have done this earlier," Anastasia said and stepped inside the portal. Or do you have a fetish for hearing abusive words before allowing someone to enter your territory?" Upon entering the portal, Anastasia found herself inside a beautiful garden. Unlike the darkness of the forest, the garden was filled with serene light. There was a crystal-clear pond in the center of the garden, reflecting the azure sky and fluffy clouds. Around the pond, a vibrant tapestry of flowers bloomed in a riot of colors. Bees and butterflies flew from flower to flower, adding a symphony of movement and life. Nearby, a weeping willow tree gracefully draped its branches, creating a cool, shady spot perfect for contemplation. I thought during the past thousands of years your temperament would have improved, but it seems that you are still as hot-blooded as before, Anastasia. An elderly voice sounded from all directions of the garden, making it impossible for people to pinpoint the location of the speaker. Anastasia didn't react upon hearing the voice and walked towards the shady spot under the willow tree, stopping some distance away from it. I am not in the mood to hear a lecture, Alaric, Anastasia said, looking at the willow tree. Suddenly, the willow tree started to shake and a transparent image of a man with fox ears and 10 tails appeared there. The man looked to be in his 50s, and his entire figure was covered in a mist-like energy. Do you need to act so cautiously? It's not like I am here to harm you, Anastasia said while rolling her eyes when she saw the man didn't appear in front of her with his real body. I am just a weak fox, Anastasia, and I need to take care of my safety in front of a powerful dragon like you, the fox man said in a calm voice and sat down under the shade of the willow tree. Weak fox my ass, if you are weak then what should I call other monsters of the dark forest, Anastasia said with a disdainful smile on her face. So, what is the reason for someone who suddenly disappeared thousands of years ago to visit me? Alaric ignored Anastasia's words and asked in the same calm voice. Don't pretend, Alaric, I am not in the mood to play your games. Knowing the level of your intelligence, you should already know why I am here. Hearing Anastasia, Alaric looked at her without saying anything. After a full minute of silence, he sighed and asked in a serious voice, is he really him? Though he looks somewhat different, you should already know the answer to your question. Anastasia didn't answer his question directly, but the words she spoke were more than enough. I see, Alaric said and looked at the pond with a wistful look on his face as if thinking about a past event. Anastasia didn't say anything when she saw the wistful look on Alaric's face. Yes, she didn't disturb him. At least for the first 2 minutes. When Alaric didn't say anything even after 2 minutes, she lost her patience and spoke in an irritated voice. Alaric, I really don't want to disturb you while you are thinking about your rosy past, but, can you tell me what I want to know before you lose yourself in your memories? Oh, sure. Alaric came back to his senses hearing Anastasia's irritated voice and nodded his head. So, what do you want to know? First, tell me, when did you find out about him? I received a request from Leopold to find 2 people who stole an enlightenment stone from his auction house and are hiding in the dark forest. Along with the compensation to find them, he also sent the photo of one of the persons who was involved in the robbery. An enlightenment stone from his auction house and are hiding in the dark forest. Along with the compensation to find them, so you found out about him because of that picture, huh? Anastasia nodded her head, thinking about Evan's picture she had seen after killing the people who tried to rob her a few days ago. CHP 783. After a moment of silence, Anastasia asked another question. You didn't tell anyone about him, right? Even though she asked the question in a normal voice, the atmosphere of the surroundings visibly cooled. Oh please Anastasia, I know I am not a good person, but I am at least not ungrateful to harm someone who saved my life in the past. Anastasia looked at Alaric for a few seconds and after seeing no signs of falsehood, the cold aura covering the surroundings disappeared and she smiled lightly. So where is he? She asked in a normal voice, but Alaric could see the excitement in her eyes. Before I tell you anything about him, the fox said and a black paper appeared in his hands. Quote. Sign it. Anastasia looked at the black paper and her eyes narrowed. Sold contract. Yes, the place where he is currently staying is quite, special, Alaric said as he couldn't find the right word. I can't tell you anything about it before you sign the sold contract as I don't want other people to know about that place. Anastasia looked at the sold contract for a few seconds, and after seeing the only term in the contract was that she wouldn't tell anyone about the place Alaric was referring to, she signed it. Now tell me, where is he? Anastasia asked after signing the sold contract. Any news? A middle-aged man with short black hair wearing a black suit asked in a neutral tone. Our people are looking for them everywhere but there is still no news about them. What about Percival, did he find anything? I contacted him a few hours ago. Unfortunately, even he wasn't able to find anything. The man wearing the black suit raised an eyebrow in surprise. Even using his foresight skill, Percival couldn't find anything about them. Yes, master. The man in the suit tapped his finger on the chair with a pondering look on his face. What about Alaric? Any news from him? No, his subordinates are searching all over the dark forest, but they also didn't find anything. I see. The man in the suit spoke in a neutral tone, but his eyes were filled with frustration, indicating he was not as calm as he was trying to show. Keep an eye on everything. Let me know if you find anything, the man said after a moment, and a shadow who was kneeling in the room disappeared. Once the shadow disappeared, the man in the suit sighed and leaned back on his couch. Just what the hell is wrong with those two people? They are just pesky low-level core evolvers, but even high-ranking core evolvers with foresight skills and authorities can't find anything about them. Leopold, the owner of the Blood Moon auction house, spoke in a tired voice as he massaged his temples. The damage that the Blood Moon auction house received because of Cedar and Evan's action was far above than he thought. Even though Lucian, unfortunate soul who was the host that day, tried to hide this incident, even going as far as to pay the owner of the Enlightenment Stone using his own money, which practically made him go bankrupt and fall into an ocean of debt, this incident still spread among the masses and the credibility of Blood Moon auction house dropped to very bottom. The Blood Moon auction house was the biggest and most influential auction house of the Star City, and there were many people who wanted to take their place. So when these people heard about this incident, they fueled the fire of the incident even more, and the credibility of the auction house dropped even further. As a result, during the last 2 monthly auctions, the Blood Moon auction house's income dropped by nearly 40%. The Blood Moon auction house was one of the biggest auction houses of Utopia, so the 40% drop was practically the loss of millions of high-level essence stones. And for Leopold, who was a merchant before being a core evolver, it was a huge blow. Leopold tried to save the situation of the auction house by announcing that he would definitely capture the people responsible for stealing the Enlightenment Stone, but even after more than 2 months, they were still unable to catch Evan and Cedar. From all the information we gathered, it is obvious that both of them disappeared inside the dark forest. Leopold spoke with a frown on his face. It is practically impossible for someone to hide from Alaric inside the dark forest, but even then he wasn't able to find them, or could it be that? Leopold narrowed his eyes and a dangerous glint shone inside his eyes. Could it be that he knew about them but is hiding them from me? But if he is really hiding them from me, then what is the reason? I gave him many precious things in order to find them and even promised to give a rank 5 monster core if he successfully found them. I don't think he would be foolish enough to become my enemy just because of a rank 1 and rank 2 core evolvers. Leopold thought about this matter for a long time. As a rank 5 core evolver, he knew how terrifying the influence of a high-level core evolver could be, not to mention the influence of a rank 6 core evolver like Alaric. After considering everything, Leopold practically found it impossible to believe that Alaric didn't know anything about Evan and Cedar, especially when both of them went inside the dark forest, which was basically his territory. I can only think of 2 reasons. Leopold muttered in a low voice. Either the information we have about them is wrong, and they never went inside the dark forest, which is why Alaric can't find them, or... The vampire's eyes narrowed and a murderous aura started to come out of his body. He is purposely hiding them from me and even preventing my people from finding them. Though Leopold felt the possibility of Alaric hiding Evan and Cedar from him was very low, he still couldn't erase this thought from his mind. After contemplating for a few minutes, he finally made a decision. His black eyes glowed blood red for a moment, and soon, the shadow that disappeared from the room once again appeared there. Master, the shadow spoke in a respectful voice while kneeling in front of Leopold. Make arrangements, I will go to the dark forest myself. Though no one could see the face of the shadow, from the shudder of his body, it was obvious that he was shocked upon hearing Leopold. Although he was shocked, the shadow quickly recomposed himself and asked in a cautious voice. Should I inform Alaric about you? As you know, it is not a good idea for a high-ranking core evolver like you to visit his territory without telling him. Leopold didn't answer immediately and thought for a few minutes. After a full 5 minutes of silence, Leopold opened his mouth. There is no need to inform him, I will talk to him once we get there. Yes, master, the shadow didn't question Leopold's decision and immediately disappeared from the room. Leopold stayed seated on his chair for a few seconds before he stood up as well. Let's see if that foxy bastard is really doing his job properly or not after taking all of those things from me. He muttered in a low voice and walked towards the door. If he is doing his job properly, I will increase the amount that I am giving him for his help as a compensation for visiting his territory without telling him, but if he is not doing his job properly. Leopold's eyes glowed blood red and he left the room. When Evan used Eyes of the Abyss to look at the cube floating in front of Octavius, he saw a strange fire burning inside it. The fire had no defined shape or color, and it was constantly changing. Sometimes it was in the shape of a red orb, sometimes an orange horizontal or vertical line, or sometimes a small dot flashing with rainbow-colored lights, and many more variations. Although the fire inside the cube was quite strange, the thing that attracted Evan's attention was the small sitting silhouette of a man inside the cube. The silhouette of the man was connected with the ever-changing fire, and when Evan looked at it closely, he noticed the small silhouette looked like Octavius. Not only that, but a wave of energy was coming out of the small silhouette, projecting the image of Octavius who was talking to them. Through his Eyes of the Abyss, Evan easily understood that the old man who was talking to them was just a projected image of the person who was inside the cube. For Evan, who had absorbed millions of souls using the soul absorption skill, it wasn't difficult to understand that the small silhouette inside the cube was a soul, more specifically speaking, the soul of the alchemist Octavius. At first, he wasn't sure what was happening, but then he noticed an invisible red wire connected to Momin's head. freewebnovel.com. The wire was coming out from the cube in which the fire and Octavius's soul were, and if it weren't for the Eyes of the Abyss that allowed him to see the hidden truth of the world, he wouldn't have been able to see it. The wire was slowly absorbing Momin's energy and was feeding it to Octavius's soul, which was inside the cube, and the worst thing was that Momin didn't even realize his energy was being drained. Maybe it was because of his strange condition that Evan saw during the second trial, but Momin didn't show any kind of reaction even though he was constantly losing his energy. Although Evan didn't care about whether Momin lived or died as he had nothing to do with him, he couldn't allow Octavius to absorb Momin's energy. Through his observation, he realized that the more energy Octavius's soul absorbed, the stronger it became, and it was a big no for Evan because he realized his skill, soul absorption, that he used to intimidate Octavius wouldn't work if his soul became stronger. After discovering that Octavius's soul was inside the cube, Evan attempted to absorb it using the soul absorption skill, and to his surprise, although it was difficult due to the strange fire within the cube, he found he could absorb Octavius's soul using soul absorption if he wanted. Octavius was terrified when he felt the danger of the soul absorption skill, which is why he didn't do anything when Evan tried to mess with him by calling him his great-grandfather. Of course, there was a reason Evan was messing with Octavius by calling him great-grandfather. He wanted to buy some time to understand why the old man was absorbing only Momin's energy. Through the Eyes of the Abyss, he could see that Blaze, Walter, and himself were completely fine, while only Momin was being drained by Octavius. After considering everything, he thought of 3 reasons as to why Octavius was absorbing only Momin's energy. First, he might not be able to absorb the energy of more than one individual at a time, which is why he first focused on Momin and was planning to absorb their energy after him. Second, Momin's berserk condition during the second trial might have been related to Octavius, giving him an opportunity to do something to Momin that allowed him to absorb his energy. Third and lastly, Octavius could absorb the energy of only a specific group of people, and Momin fell into that category. Maybe he had a special physique, or perhaps his conceptual energy was unique. There might be other reasons as well, but he couldn't think of anything else at the moment. After considering these 3 reasons, Evan immediately forced Octavius to expel Momin as he didn't want his soul to grow stronger by absorbing Momin's energy. At the same time, he wanted to see if Octavius would try to absorb the energy of Blaze or any other person after expelling Momin. To Evan's surprise, Octavius didn't attempt to absorb their energy after expelling Momin, which meant the probability of the second and third reasons he thought of being correct was quite high. After ejecting Momin when Octavius was about to begin the third trial, for some reason, Evan's instincts started screaming in danger, and he instantly prevented the old man from starting the third trial. After stopping Octavius by stating that he wanted to add something before he started the trial, Evan's mind worked at full speed, and he contemplated whether he should absorb Octavius's soul or not to avoid the danger his instincts were warning him about. Just when he was pondering what he should do, the memory of Cedar telling him about the tomb of the ancient for the first time automatically appeared in his mind, and he remembered how the soul seals that were placed on his soul trembled when Cedar talked about the tomb. Evan himself didn't know why, but when this memory appeared in his mind, he stopped using the artifact mask that changed his appearance and returned to his original appearance. Perhaps he revealed his original appearance to Octavius, who was killed by the creator of the tomb, because he wanted to know if he was really related to the tomb of the ancient in some way, or maybe there was another reason as to why he stopped using the mask, but for some reason, Evan felt it was the right thing to do. Oh, how is this possible? When Evan saw the old man's reaction after seeing his real appearance, he was 100% sure that he was definitely somehow related to the tomb of the ancient. It seems this old man was killed by the Shadow Monarch who looked exactly like me, which is why he is shocked after seeing me. Evan thought inwardly when he saw the shocked look on the old man's face. Just when Evan was thinking the old man would continue to act like a fearful guy after seeing his real appearance, the shocked expression Octavius was showing disappeared, and a joyful look that was filled with hope appeared on his face. Yo, you are finally here. Do you know for how long I have been waiting for you? Octavius said in a trembling voice while looking at Evan as if he was looking at his last hope. Seeing the sudden change in Octavius's expressions, Evan's mind went blank and he looked at him with a blank expression on his face. Evan looked at Octavius with a blank look on his face. Why, you are finally here. I thought I was done for when the people who came here in the past told me you were dead, the old man said in a trembling voice, trying his best not to cry. What is going on? Did this old man smoke something illegal? Evan was utterly dumbfounded when he saw the old man was on the verge of crying after seeing him and didn't understand what was happening. Blaze and Walter were even more shocked than Evan because they couldn't understand why the old man was so happy after seeing Evan. Of course, both of them recognized Evan's real identity as the person who stole the Enlightenment Stone from the Blood Moon auction house and had a bounty of millions of high-level essence stones on his head. As they saw Evan's real appearance, Blaze and Walter finally realized they were being deceived by him. Especially Blaze, who realized Evan was really just a mid-level rank. One core evolver and wasn't someone who was hiding his rank. If he is just a mid-level rank 1 core evolver, then how did he kill that beginner level rank 2 demon in just a single punch? Blaze thought with a stunned look on her face as she remembered how Evan killed the beginner level rank 2 demon outside of the Essence Spring Pond. Evan felt Blaze and Walter's gaze on him, but he was not in the mood to entertain them as his mind was in complete chaos after hearing what Octavius said earlier. He was waiting for me, Evan said inwardly, and his mind ran at full speed, trying to understand what was going on. freewebnovel.com. In less than 3 seconds, he processed everything and reached a conclusion. This guy was killed, or at the very least, his physical body was destroyed by the Shadow Monarch in the past, leaving behind only his soul. After destroying his physical body, that guy made a deal with this old man, and now this old man is thinking I am the Shadow Monarch. Evan said inwardly and glanced at the old man who was looking at him with hopeful eyes. Seeing the way Octavius was looking at him, Evan sighed inwardly. Honestly, considering everything that happened to him since the moment he awakened his monarch physique, he already realized that he might be the reincarnation of the Shadow Monarch, but realizing something and accepting it were two different things. He really didn't want to accept the fact that he is the reincarnation of someone else. After all, no one would be happy to find out that they are not really themselves but someone else. But looking at the way Octavius was staring at him, Evan had no choice but to accept the fact that even if he is not the Shadow Monarch, he is definitely related to him very deeply. This is complicated. I really don't want to become like that guy. In his dreams, Evan saw the Shadow Monarch many times, and honestly speaking, they were not good memories. In every memory Evan saw of him, he always felt like he was looking at an emotionless doll instead of a person. Other than the times he interacted with Anastasia, in all the other memories, he was like an emotionless person whose sole purpose was either to kill someone or destroy something. The way he acts is very similar to the way I act under the effect of the title, The Cursed One, Evan suddenly thought when he remembered the cold, emotionless feeling he felt when his title, The Cursed One, reacted in the past. Seriously, sometimes I feel like I would go crazy because of all of this sh*t. Evan muttered in a low voice and rubbed his forehead. Just thinking about all of these matters was giving him a headache. Seeing Evan was not saying anything, Octavius became anxious. You didn't forget about our agreement, right? He asked in a trembling voice as if he was afraid of something. Evan stopped thinking about his life issues and looked at the trembling Octavius. Now what should I do? Evan really had no idea what agreement the old man was talking about, and he was afraid that if he said something wrong, things might become complicated. Noticing Octavius's anxiety increasing due to his silence, he finally made up his mind. Why are you acting so anxious? Do you think someone of my level would go back on his words? If I didn't want to fulfill agreement with you, do you think I would have left you alive at that time? Evan asked in a neutral voice. Hearing Evan's neutral voice, the old man shuddered and quickly shook his head. Oh, of course not, I know you would never go back on your words. After all, you are. Stop your flattering. Evan interrupted Octavius when he noticed the old man was about to reveal his identity. He glanced in Blaze and Walter's direction, and saw they were looking at everything with narrowed eyes. It was obvious that both of them realized something was wrong with him. I didn't ask Octavius to kick them out along with that fatty because I thought they would come in handy if this old man tried to do something, but I don't think I need to keep them here anymore. Evan thought inwardly and looked at Octavius. Kick them out as well, we can't let other people know about the agreement, right? Evan said in a neutral voice. Oh, you were right. Octavius nodded his head upon hearing Evan and snapped his fingers. Why? Blaze and Walter were stunned when they heard Evan, but before they could protest, both of them were kicked out by Octavius. Once Walter and Blaze disappeared, Octavius looked at Evan with anticipation as if he was waiting for something. Seeing the old man's anticipatory look, Evan took a deep breath and a serious expression appeared on his face. It's time to put my ability to spout bullshit to the test. Evan thought inwardly and opened his mouth. It's time to put my ability to spout bullshit to the test, Evan thought inwardly and opened his mouth. Earlier, you said you have been waiting for me for quite some time, he asked in a serious voice. Can you tell me how long you have been waiting for me? Hearing Evan's question, Octavius looked at him in confusion. You don't know how much time has passed since you trapped me here. Are you blind or something? Evan spoke in a neutral voice and pointed at himself. Can't you see my condition? At first, Octavius was confused upon hearing Evan's words, but soon he realized what he was talking about and his eyes opened wide in shock. What happened to you? After seeing Evan's real appearance, Octavius was so shocked that he completely forgot about his rank. But now that Evan himself pointed it out, he finally noticed he was just a mid-level rank 1 noob. The people who came here in the past told me that the Shadow Monarch is already dead. I didn't believe them at that time, but... Octavius looked at Evan and his entire soul shuddered. Could it be they were telling the truth? Seeing the way Octavius was looking at him, Evan already knew what he was thinking about, so he rolled his eyes and said in a neutral tone. Don't think too much. This is not my real body. Octavius came back to his senses hearing Evan and looked at him in confusion. What do you mean it's not your real body? After creating the tomb, I went back to the Shadow Realm and fell into a deep slumber because of boredom. I just woke up a few days ago, and when I remembered my agreement with you, I created this body and sent it here to take care of everything, Evan said in a plain voice, and an amused smile appeared on his face. Do you think if it was the real me I would have talked to you like this? Hearing Evan, Octavius thought about the cold and ruthless guy who trapped him here, and a look of horror appeared on his face. He knew that if the real Shadow Monarch came here, he wouldn't even be able to open his mouth in front of him because of his overwhelming presence. Seeing Octavius's horror-filled look, Evan nodded his head inwardly. Because of my slumber, I don't know how much time has passed, which is why I asked you how long you have been waiting for me. Honestly, I am not sure myself, Octavius said in an uncertain voice. In order to save my limited soul energy, I stayed in a state of unconsciousness most of the time. But if I have to guess, I would say it has been more than 4,000 years. Holy sh*t. Evan did not show any kind of reaction outwardly, but inwardly, he was really shocked. How is this old man still senile after being trapped here for more than 4,000 years? He asked himself and looked at Octavius with dead eyes. Now that I think about it, isn't my excuse that I fell into a deep slumber complete nonsense? Evan suddenly said, thinking that only an idiot would believe that he was sleeping for more than 4,000 years. He glanced at Octavius to see his reaction and noticed he didn't look suspicious about him at all. Maybe he really went senile because of being trapped here for so long that he didn't even realize my bull's it. Unknown to Evan, the reason Octavius did not react to his statement about him sleeping for more than 4,000 years was because he himself did the same. In order to save his limited soul energy, Octavius had no choice but to stay in an unconscious state during all this time. During the past thousands of years, he only woke up when someone entered his cave and slept for the rest of the time. Since I can sleep for thousands of years, why can't he? That was Octavius's mindset. Yes, a completely broken mindset that formed due to him sleeping and doing nothing else for the past thousands of years. From the information I have, the tomb of the ancient was discovered around 3,000 years ago, but this guy is saying he has been here for more than 4,000 years. Evan thought and narrowed his eyes. Does it mean it took people more than 1,000 years to find the tomb's location even though it is located at the starting point of the boundless sea, which is a very active place? Wait a second. Suddenly, Evan remembered one of the things that he read in a book about the Shadow Monarch during his free time in the closed world of Drades. If I am not wrong, it was around 3,000 years ago that the incident known as Eternal Night took place. Evan said to himself, Shadow Monarch completely disappeared after the Eternal Night incident. At the same time, a war between elves and dryads broke out, and just a few days later, the tomb was discovered. Evan didn't know why, but he felt all of these events that took place at the same time were connected somehow. Don't tell me even the war between the elves and Drades has something to do with that bastard, Evan thought with a frustrated look on his face and rubbed his eyebrows. You said you were just a clone, right? Evan snapped out of his thoughts and looked at Old Man. Can you even complete the agreement when your real body is not here? Octavius asked hesitantly, looking at Evan with concern. Let's first take care of this guy before thinking about the mess that guy left behind for me, Evan said to himself and focused on Octavius. First, tell me everything about the agreement we had, he asked in a plain voice, maintaining a neutral expression. You don't remember our agreement? Octavius asked him in a shocked voice. Are you an idiot? Of course I know about the agreement, Evan said while rolling his eyes. I asked you because although my real body told me everything, I want to confirm it with you to make sure that I didn't forget anything because of my thousands of year-long slumber. Oh. A look of understanding flashed on Octavius's face when heard Evan and he nodded. The agreement between us was very simple. You told me that. The agreement was that when you come back in the future, I will serve you for 1,000 years and in return, you will give me a good physical body after my service period is over, Octavius said in a serious voice. I see. Hearing the old man's words, Evan nodded his head calmly as if he already knew about it. So what should I do to fulfill the agreement? He asked in a neutral voice as if the revelation that the old man wanted to serve him for 1,000 years didn't shock him. You don't know I am not the real Shadow Monarch, old man. I am a clone. Did you forget already? Evan didn't let Octavius finish what he was saying and spoke while looking at him as if he were looking at an idiot. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Octavius made an ashamed face as if he was embarrassed because of his own stupidity and lowered his head. Cough. He coughed in order to hide his embarrassment and quickly answered Evan's question. To fulfill the agreement you just need to make a soul pact with me and let me come with you. I will help you to the best of my ability for the next 1,000 years, and you will give me a physical body once my service ends. Soul pact, Evan once again nodded his head, pretending he understood what Octavius said when in reality, he didn't know a **T about the soul pacts. Wait a second. Suddenly, Evan thought about something. Even though he is saying he wants to serve me for 1,000 years, do I even need his help? Unlike other people, Evan had his shadow undeads who could do his every bidding, so he started to doubt whether he even needed Octavius's help or not. Before going any further, I at least need to know what he can do for me, Evan thought and looked at Octavius. Before I proceed with the soul pact, I need to know what you can help me with. freewebnovel.com. Hearing Evan, Octavius looked at him in confusion as if he did not understand his question. Do you really need to ask something so basic? Octavius asked in a strange voice, looking at Evan as if he were a rare animal. Evan didn't say anything and continued to look at Octavius with neutral eyes. Seeing that Evan really wanted to know, Octavius sighed and said in an irritated voice. I am a rank 5 alchemist, so it is obvious I will help you with alchemy. As someone who is at the top of the power, you should already know the benefits of having a rank 5 alchemist under your command. Normally, Octavius wouldn't have dared to speak with Evan in an irritated voice even after knowing that he was just a clone and not the real Shadow Monarch, but he was really angry when Evan asked him what he could do despite knowing that he was one of the best alchemists. "Oh, so you are a rank 5 alchemist," Evan said in a plain voice as if he did not care too much about it. But inwardly, he was really freaking out. The Fu-K, this old man is a rank 5 alchemist. Even in a mega city like Star City, there is no rank 5 alchemist, but this old fart is saying he is a rank 5 alchemist and he wants to serve me. If it wasn't for Evan's excellent control over his emotions, he would really have started to shout in excitement. Seeing Evan didn't show any reaction after hearing he was a rank 5 alchemist, Octavius started to sweat. Don't tell me he doesn't care about my alchemist status and won't fulfill the agreement. Before we proceed with the Soul Pact, tell me more about it. As you know, although I am just a clone, my soul is still connected with my real body and it would be troublesome if your soul gets swallowed by my soul, Evan said and used the fear skill just for a split second, releasing the true form of his soul that sent a chill running down Octavius's soul. Evan didn't know anything about Soul Pact, but from its name, he could guess that it was somehow related to souls. And using abnormal spiritual skill like fear, he could extract some information about Soul Pact from Octavius without raising any suspicion. Octavius's soul was already in a weakened state, so when he felt the overwhelming soul aura that Evan released using the fear skill, it made him sweat like a pig even though he didn't have a physical body. Just what kind of monstrous soul does he have? Octavius thought inwardly, and he also felt like if he recklessly proceeded with a soul pact with him, his soul might really be destroyed because of the overwhelming presence that he felt earlier. Octavius took deep breaths to calm down and spoke after a moment. Although your soul is abnormal, we don't have to worry too much, Octavius said and stretched his hand forward. I will give you the essence of my soul, and you will connect it with your soul. A milky white energy appeared in Octavius's hand and he sent it towards Evan. Once you connect my soul essence with your soul, I will actively absorb a very small amount of your spiritual energy in order to sustain my existence. At the same time, through the soul essence, you can control my life and death and even completely annihilate my soul if you wish to. Evan looked at the milky white energy that Octavius sent towards him using the eyes of the abyss, and after finding nothing wrong with it, he poked it with his finger. Arg! The moment Evan poked the milky white energy, he heard a painful cry and saw Octavius writhing in pain. Don't carelessly play with my soul essence or you will completely destroy my soul. Oh. Evan nodded his head in understanding upon hearing Octavius's painful voice and stopped poking the milky white energy. Aren't you afraid? You just gave me something that I can use to kill you anytime I want, Evan asked after pulling back his hand. What are you talking about? Even without that thing, you can easily kill me using your powers. Evan was a bit confused when he heard Octavius, but he soon understood what he was talking about and smiled slightly. He still thinks that I am the Shadow Monarch, and in his eyes, that guy can kill him even without using his soul essence, huh? He thought inwardly and shook his head. While talking to Octavius, Evan was using the eyes of the abyss the entire time to see if the old man was lying to him about the soul pact, but during the entire time, he didn't detect any lies. Well, I don't think I have any reason to refuse when I am getting the service of a rank 5 alchemist for free. Evan said to himself and looked at the milky white energy. Not to mention, I can get rid of him anytime I want using his soul essence. Evan looked at Octavius's soul essence for a few seconds and finally made up his mind. A 1.5 meter tall black-colored sheep moved forward, leaving behind a trail of purple-colored lightning. Atop the black sheep, a man with gray-colored hair was sitting, looking at the palm of his hand, which was glowing with different colors of light. Sometimes his palm flashed with red light, sometimes orange, sometimes green, and many more. I forgot to ask this, but you will return prismatic fire to me once our agreement period is over, right? The lazy-looking man with gray hair who was riding the black sheep heard an old man's voice. Evan smiled when he heard Octavius's voice but did not say anything. It had been a few hours since he completed the soul pact with Octavius and left the cave dimension. Once he bound Octavius's soul with himself using the soul pact, the dimension where Octavius was trapped started to collapse. Using his control over the dimension, the old man quickly teleported Evan out of there. Of course, before sending him out, Octavius told Evan to form a contract with the fire inside the cube. The name of the fire that was inside the cube was prismatic fire, and it was bound to Octavius's soul. But because of the soul pact, which made Octavius Evan's slave, the bond between the old man and the fire broke, giving an opportunity to Evan to bind the fire with himself. At first, Evan was surprised when Octavius asked him to bind the fire with himself, but when he saw the details of the fire, his surprise turned into shock, and he immediately bound the fire with himself. Once the prismatic fire was bound with Evan, Octavius teleported him out of the cave dimension. To avoid getting in trouble with the people who were waiting outside the cave entrance, Evan asked the old man to teleport him far away from the location of the cave entrance. freewebnovel.com. There were many things that Evan wanted to ask Octavius regarding the things that happened during the trials, but during the past few hours, he didn't even bother to talk to him because he was too busy looking at the fire he received in the cave dimension. This thing is really insane. Evan muttered in a low voice as he looked at the notification window floating in front of him with a big smile on his face. Prismatic fire. A legendary fire that encompasses 7 colored fires inside it, each colored fire representing a different aspect of power or elemental force. The fire is currently weakened and can't display its full potential. Following are the effects of 7 colored fires. Red fire. The red fire represents intense heat and destruction, capable of destroying everything and incinerating objects. Blue fire. The blue fire signifies freezing cold, able to create icy barriers and freeze your enemy inside a cold burning fire. Green fire. A poisonous fire that releases toxic fumes and corrosive substances, causing damage over time to living beings, structures, and organic materials. Can weaken defenses and leave lingering effects. Yellow fire. Yellow fire represents electricity and energy, capable of stunning or electrifying targets. Purple fire signifies mystic energy and enchantment, capable of dispelling magic or buffing your abilities. Orange fire. Orange fire represents explosive force, causing concussive blasts and widespread damage. Using this fire, you can release explosive energy, causing concussive blasts, shockwaves, and detonations. It can shatter barriers, destroy structures, and create chaotic bursts of destructive force. White fire signifies purity and healing, able to restore life or ward off dark forces. This fire emits radiant light and healing energy, capable of purifying darkness, dispelling curses, healing wounds, restoring life, and providing protection against dark forces or malevolent magic. Damn, this fire is completely overpowered. Evan said inwardly as he looked at the red fire that covered his palm. Suddenly, the red fire turned into white fire, and he felt a gentle force enveloping his entire body. Evan had already read the details of the fire hundreds of times, but no matter how many times he read it, he still couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of this fire. If I use this fire in conjunction with my skills, I will be able to fight even stronger opponents like that fat guy or my son. Evan said to himself as his eyes gleamed with excitement. For example, if he uses orange fire that represents explosive force along with his skill Skyfall, he might be able to release attacks capable of harming even a mid-level rank 2 core evolvers without using Shadow Possession or the Death Guardian authority. He was just a mid-level rank 1 core evolver, so being able to release attacks capable of harming mid-level rank 2 core evolver was completely absurd. The prismatic fire has 7 different aspects of powers or elemental properties, each with its unique abilities. If he uses the power of this fire wisely, he can increase his powers to a completely different level. Just thinking about the possibilities that the prismatic fire opened for him made Evan drool in excitement. Suddenly, while moving forward, Evan noticed a beginner-level rank 2 monster a few kilometers away from him. The monster was 3 meters tall and looked like a demon cow with 2 sharp pointy horns coming out from the top of its head. Stop! Seeing the monster, Evan ordered the wind and lightning sheep to stop moving forward. Once the sheep stopped, Evan looked at the cow, which was staring at him menacingly from a few kilometers away, and a small smile appeared on his face. Let's check out the power of this fire, he muttered in a low voice and dismounted the sheep. The moment he dismounted the sheep, the cow bolted toward him like an enraged bull. Blue fire. Seeing the monster coming towards him, Evan said in a low voice, and the fire burning in his palm turned light blue in color. With a move of his hand, he sent a giant wave of blue fire towards the cow. The wave of blue fire froze everything that came into its path and sealed everything inside the ice. When the cow saw the wave of blue fire coming towards it, it shivered because of its cold aura and tried to dodge it, but before it could dodge the blue fire in Evan's palm turned into yellow fire, and he sent a powerful electric shock towards the cow from the ground, which stunned it for a moment. Because of not being able to move due to the effect of the yellow fire, the cow could only watch helplessly as its body was engulfed by the blue fire and turned into an ice sculpture. Of course, although the cow was frozen, it was still alive because of its high endurance and tremendous life force. Crack! In less than 2 seconds, Evan heard the sound of cracking and noticed that the ice covering the cow had already started to break. Looking at the ice that was slowly breaking, a thoughtful look appeared on Evan's face. So if I use all of my world essence while using the blue fire, I should be able to freeze a normal beginner level rank 2 core evolver for around 8 to 9 seconds. Evan muttered to himself, and the yellow fire in his hand changed into green fire that was releasing faint smoke. Evan looked at the green fire covering his palm and with a smile on his face, pointed his hand towards the cow's ice sculpture, setting it on fire. The green fire had a corrosive effect that could damage living beings and even reduce their defense. So when the cow's statue was engulfed by the green fire, the ice covering it started to melt, and at the same time, its skin started to rot, with burn marks emitting green smoke appearing all over its body. Roar! The monster roared in pain as it felt its entire body burning and melting simultaneously because of the toxic effect of the green fire. Evan observed the cow for a few seconds and noticed that it was using its world essence to slowly dispel the green fire that was burning its body. "Let's end this," Evan suddenly said in a low voice, and the green fire in his hand turned blood red. He pointed his hand towards the monster, and a small fingernail-sized ball of red fire formed in front of him. The ground around Evan started to melt due to the intense heat released by the small red dot, turning the ground into molten lava. Evan was also sweating profusely, and if he didn't have control over the fire, his clothes would have already turned into ashes. In just 2 seconds, Evan poured most of his world essence into the red dot. The cow monster, which was trying to dispel the green fire, suddenly felt a danger like never before and turned its head to look in Evan's direction. When the monster looked at Evan, all it saw was a cold smile, and the next second, bang! The sound barrier shattered, and like a bullet, the small red dot that Evan formed using the red fire struck the cow's head, without giving it any chance to dodge. The moment the red dot struck the cow, it seemed as if time itself stopped flowing, and everything came to a halt. But the strange situation didn't last long, because the next second, boom! A massive explosion as if a nuclear bomb had detonated shook thousands of kilometers of area, scaring the sh*t out of all the low-level monsters. A red mushroom-shaped dust cloud rose high in the sky, obscuring the gloomy sky of the second layer and casting an eerie pall over the ground. As the dust cloud rose high in the sky, Evan stood behind the massive body of the bullbear to protect himself from the shockwave and looked towards the giant mushroom cloud with a wide smile on his face. "Now that's what I call an explosion," Evan said with a wide smile on his face as he looked at the giant mushroom cloud in the distance. After a few seconds, when the aftereffects of the explosion subsided, he came out from behind Brown and tried to look for the cow monster using his spiritual senses, only to see burnt chunks of meat scattered all over the place. Well, it seems the green fire decreased its defense quite a bit, which is why it wasn't able to defend itself and was blasted into smithereens. Evan said with a shake of his head, not caring too much about the fact that he lost a chance to create a new shadow undead for himself. He looked at the red fire covering his palm, and his eyes gleamed with thoughtfulness. The destructive power and the heat of the red fire are already very powerful, but what if I combine the red fire with the orange fire that represents explosive force? Evan muttered in a low voice, and his heart started to beat wildly. Wouldn't the power of prismatic fire increase even more if I combine the different kinds of fire to bring out their true potential? Octavius, who was inside Evan's soul, looked at everything with dead eyes. From his expression, I can already tell that he is never going to return my precious prismatic fire to me, he thought with a depressed look on his face, and felt like crying. Roar! Just when Octavius was feeling depressed, he suddenly heard a loud roar that sent a chill down his soul. Evan's expression also changed when he heard the loud roar, and without wasting even a second, he quickly mounted the wind and lightning sheep and ordered it to dash away from there. As the wind and lightning sheep bolted away, Evan glanced in the direction of the roar and saw a dark aura rising in the sky. It's definitely a beginner level rank 3 monster, Evan thought with a serious look on his face as he looked at the dark aura covering the sky a few thousand kilometers away from him. Although the monster is very far away from me, I should get out of here as soon as possible before I catch its attention, he said in a low voice, and a purple fire covered his palm. Purple fire signifies mystic energy and enchantment, capable of dispelling magic or buffing abilities. Once the purple fire covered his palm, Evan pressed it against the sheep's back, and the sheep's entire body was enveloped by a light purple fiery aura. Evan was already short on world essence because of testing out the powers of prismatic fire earlier, so when he used the purple fire, he lost almost all of his world essence and felt a mild headache. Although he experienced a mild headache, Evan was very pleased with the result of the purple fire because its buff significantly increased the speed at which the wind and lightning sheep was running, nearly reaching the top speed of a normal mid-level rank 2 monster. I used around 20 points of world essence to buff the sheep, and from the looks of it, the buff will last for around 1 minute. Evan observed the result of the buff provided by the purple fire and drank a potion to recover his world essence. Although the duration of the buff was not very long, Evan didn't complain because it was already quite absurd that he could use the fire to give buffs to his undeads. Evan looked in the direction of the rank 3 monster and sighed in relief when he felt that the monster wasn't approaching him. Soon enough, under the buff of the purple fire, the wind and lightning sheep ran far away, and Evan couldn't sense the aura of the rank 3 monster anymore. Once he couldn't feel the monster's presence, his tense body relaxed and he exhaled lightly. "Hey, old man, come out, there are a few things that I want to ask you." The moment Evan spoke, a transparent image of Octavius appeared in front of him. Evan looked at the old man for a few seconds, and after a moment, he decided to ask the question that was bothering him the most. What was wrong with the people who attacked me during the second trial? freewebnovel.com. Octavius's soul stiffened when he heard Evan's question and he started to sweat profusely. Evan narrowed his eyes when he saw this, and a smirk appeared on his face. "Let me guess, the people who attacked me were the ones who failed the first trial, but you offered them a chance to advance to the second trial, or should I say, you lured them into a trap by offering them a second chance and somehow took control of them after they fell into your trap. Then you sent those people to capture me so that you can take me under your control as well, right?" Hearing Evan, Octavius looked at him with an expression that was asking, "How did you know that?" Evan rolled his eyes when he saw the old man's expression and said in a plain voice, "When I saw your soul for the first time, I noticed that you didn't have much energy left and guessed that you were capturing the people who entered the cave dimension to absorb their energy in order to keep yourself alive." He paused after speaking this and continued after a moment. "Honestly, I don't care about the fact that you tried to capture me using those people. The reason I am talking about this matter is that I am curious as to how you controlled those people. Why were the first 2 people who came to capture me not able to use their skills properly? And why was the fatty who appeared last able to use all of his skills, unlike the first 2? Hearing Evan, Octavius stayed silent for a moment. After some time, he opened his mouth and said with a sigh, "The reason the first 2 people were not able to use their skills was because of the method I used to control them, and as for why the fatty who appeared last was able to use his skills, it was because... It was because..." Evan urged the old man to speak when he saw he was hesitating. Octavius scratched the back of his head, and an embarrassed look appeared on his face. Evan narrowed his eyes when he saw the way Octavius was acting and felt something was not right. Seeing Evan's narrowed eyes, Octavius took a deep breath and finally spoke, "That fatty was able to use his skills in zone because he was not completely under my control. He was just helping me because I blackmailed him." After saying this, Octavius turned his head sideways, looking quite embarrassed. Hearing the word blackmail and the way Octavius was acting, Evan's mouth hung open and his imagination started to run wild. Why is he acting like this? Don't tell me he caught that fatty swinging that way with the male elf and the second fatty and recorded his deed inside a recording crystal. Old fart, I didn't know you had that kind of taste. Not only did you watch a 4-meter tall fatty swinging that way with a small elf and a second fatty, but you even recorded it, Evan said, looking at Octavius as if he were looking at garbage. Disgusting. Quote? Literal question marks appeared around Octavius as he couldn't understand why Evan was looking at him in such a way. Are you misunderstanding something? I don't know what it means to swing that way, but I didn't record anything. I just blackmailed that giant by using the lives of his comrades, Octavius said while gritting his teeth because, for some reason, the way Evan was looking at him was really pissing him off. Huh, Evan was stunned when he heard Octavius and looked at him with a suspicious expression. "You're saying you didn't catch that fatty swinging that way and recorded his deed?" "I didn't. I didn't catch him swinging that way. And for God's sake, tell me what the fuck do you mean by swinging that way?" Octavius shouted in an enraged voice while looking at Evan with red eyes. Earlier, Octavius felt embarrassed because he had to blackmail Momin in order to make him submit. As a former rank 5 core evolver, it was a disgrace for him to resort to such a lowly method to control a rank 2 core evolver, which is why he was so embarrassed. Cough. Evan coughed when he saw Octavius's red eyes and changed the topic with a serious expression. "You said you blackmailed that fatty by using the lives of his comrades, right? Tell me more about it." Octavius looked at Evan's serious face and felt like strangling him to death. But the poor old man knew that he couldn't do anything against Evan, so he took a deep breath and spoke after a moment. "In order to control those people, I used a monster insect called the mind-controlling bug. Mind-controlling bugs are only effective against people who are mid-level rank 2 or below. It is very hard to control peak rank 2 and above core evolvers using these bugs because of the high spiritual power of the core evolvers who are above mid-level rank 2. Octavius paused after saying this and continued after a moment. "That fatty was from a giant species. Because of their low population, all the giants treat each other like family. So, in order to control that peak rank 2 giant, I threatened him using the lives of the 2 beginner-level rank 2 giants who entered the cave with him and were already under my control because of the mind-controlling bug." Octavius glanced at Evan and saw he was listening carefully, so he continued. "By using those 2 giants, I asked him to lower his spiritual defense and forcefully planted a mind-controlling bug inside him. Generally, people can't use their skills or the power of their core properly under the control of the mind bug, but the will of that peak rank 2 giant was too powerful. And even under the effect of the mind bug, he was still able to use his skills without any problem. However, even though he could use all of his powers, he was still unable to catch you." Evan listened to Octavius carefully and rubbed his chin with a thoughtful look on his face. "I see. Let me guess, after I escaped from there, you tried to lure my son, Walter, into your trap as well through that giant, but my son turned out to be a bastard who didn't give a damn about the lives of the elves who were under your control, right?" Octavius's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard Evan still calling Walter his son and nodded his head. "The reason you were successfully able to absorb that fatty's energy was also because of that mind-controlling bug of yours, right? Although you couldn't control him to the full extent, you still managed to control his mind to some degree so that he didn't even notice when you started to absorb his energy, right?" Octavius once again nodded his head and said with a sigh, "My soul was too weak, and if I had tried to absorb the energy of your son or sister, they would have immediately noticed it because they were not under the effect of the mind bug. If they had noticed it and used a spiritual skill on me, even under the protection of the white fire that was keeping my soul alive, I would have perished because of my weak soul." Evan didn't blame Octavius for what he did, nor did he care about it because, in the end, the old man was just trying to preserve his soul. More than that, this mess was caused by a certain someone who is deeply related to him. As Evan thought about the things that Octavius told him, something clicked in his mind and he asked in a serious voice, "Hey old man, is that mind-controlling bug still planted inside that fatty's body?" "Yes, normally, I would have removed that bug from his body after sucking him dry, but because you asked me to kick him out in the middle, I didn't get a chance to remove that bug." Evan's heart started to beat wildly when he heard Octavius. Can he remove that bug on his own? Octavius shook his head hearing Evan and said in a certain voice, "That bug is planted inside his mind. If he tries to remove it on his own, the bug will immediately destroy his mind, so I don't think he would take the risk of removing it on his own." "Does it mean you can still control that guy to some extent using that bug?" "As long as I am not very far away from him, I can do that." Octavius nodded his head. Peef ha 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 ha. Hearing the old man, Evan tried to hold back his laughter, but in the end, he couldn't hold it back and started to laugh like a madman. "Good, good," he said in a delighted voice and looked at Octavius. "Be ready, old man, we are going to cause a lot of chaos in the future." Octavius was confused hearing Evan, but he did not dwell on it and simply nodded his head. "Oh, right." Suddenly, Evan remembered another thing and looked back at Octavius. "There are just 2 more things that I need to know," he said and pointed at the palm of his right hand. "What is this strange rune that seeped inside my palm at the end of the second trial?" And Evan's face turned deadly serious and he said in a deep voice, "Tell me everything that you know about the Shadow Monarch. Why did he trap you here? Why he create this tomb? I want to know everything." Octavius was taken aback when he heard Evan and looked at his right palm. "What rune are you talking about?" he asked with a confused look on his face. Evan frowned when he saw Octavius's confused look and poured a little bit of his world essence inside his palm, making the rune that seeped inside his hand during the second trial shine. As the rune shined, its outline appeared on Evan's palm, making it possible for Octavius to see what it looked like. This rune. Octavius looked at the rune on Evan's palm for a moment and shook his head. "I don't know anything about this rune." "What do you mean you don't know anything about this rune?" Evan asked with a frown on his face. "Wasn't that cave dimension under your control? Since that dimension was under your control, you should know everything related to it." "Although I had control over that dimension, it doesn't mean I know everything about it." "Did you forget, you were the one who created it, not me?" Octavius said in a helpless voice. Not only that, but because of not having enough energy, I spent most of my time sleeping and never got a chance to explore that dimension. You can't blame me for not knowing everything about that place." Evan opened his mouth to say something but no words came out. Damn that guy, couldn't he have left behind a user manual or something to explain everything about that cave dimension? Evan cursed inwardly and rubbed his forehead. "Although I am not sure, but if my guess is correct, this rune might be related to teleportation or an entry permit to enter a hidden or locked area." While Evan was lost in his thoughts, he heard Octavius's slightly uncertain voice. "Something related to teleportation or an entry permit." Evan looked at the old man, indicating him to continue. "I am not fully sure, but I had seen a rune similar to it in another secret realm a few thousand years ago. That rune was a token of some sort. Using that rune, its owner could enter inside a locked area of the secret realm, so this rune might also be something similar." Hearing Octavius, Evan's eyes opened wide. Could it be? He looked inside his shadow storage and saw the ancient alchemy chest, destruction lightning ball, and the map of the tomb of the ancient. Seeing these things, a sudden thought came into his mind. Could it be that I was teleported inside that reward room because of this rune? Evan thought inwardly and looked back at Octavius. He told him about the reward room and asked him if he knew anything about it, and just as Evan expected, the old man shook his head. "I don't know anything about the reward room you are talking about." Hearing Octavius, Evan was now sure that he was sent inside that reward room because of the rune that seeped inside his hand. He already had doubts regarding that room, especially because of the map that he found there. He took out the map of the tomb from his shadow storage and showed it to Octavius. "Do you know anything about this map?" Octavius looked at the map that Evan took out and once again shook his head, indicating he didn't know anything about it. "I was wondering why the map I found inside that room is similar to the current terrain of the tomb, but it seems it was also arranged by that guy." Evan said inwardly and felt a headache. Just what the fuck is wrong with that guy? I feel like I am dancing at the palm of his hand and he already knows everything about the future. By the way, I don't know if the reward room you are talking about is related to this rune or not, but since this rune is still here, it means that it can still be used. Evan came out of his thoughts hearing Octavius and looked at him. "You mean there might still be a place inside the tomb where I will need to use this rune to enter?" "Correct." Octavius nodded his head and looked at Evan in confusion. "Honestly, I am surprised you don't know about these things. Although I know you are a clone, but still. Aren't you completely ignorant?" Evan's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he heard the old man calling him ignorant, and the sad reality was that he couldn't refute him because he really was ignorant about these things. He once again sighed inwardly and shook his head. "By the way, didn't this old fart tell me he is a rank 5 alchemist?" Evan suddenly thought and remembered the books related to ancient alchemy that he found inside the reward room. "I will ask him about ancient alchemy later," Evan said to himself and stopped pouring his world essence inside his hand, making the outline of the rune disappear from the palm of his hand. "Forget about this rune. Tell me how you ended up here and why why I created this tomb. You even forgot about why you created this tomb and how I ended up here." Octavius looked at Evan with a face full of shock. Evan didn't say anything hearing Octavius's shocked voice and looked at him with a neutral look on his face. Seeing Evan's neutral look, Octavius knew that he wasn't joking, so he sighed and spoke after a moment. "I was busy with one of my experiments when one of your shadow undead broke into my house and captured me. After I was captured, well, I was brought here, you destroyed my physical body, made an agreement with me, and more than 4,000 years later, now we are here. Evan just nodded his head hearing Octavius and signaled him to continue. As for why you created this realm, I am not sure, but if I remember correctly, I think you created this realm to seal something here. Seal something? Evan raised an eyebrow hearing Octavius and signaled him to continue. Octavius didn't continue immediately, instead, he fell into deep thought as if trying to remember something and said after a few minutes. It happened more than 4,000 years ago, so I don't remember clearly, but if my memory serves me right, I remember that I had just captured 2 talented kids in order to take away their talent and was planning to use them to create a blood-soul nourishing pill for myself when the Angel of Death broke into my mansion and captured me. Angel of Death. For some reason, Evan flinched when he heard the words Angel of Death, and an image of a gentle-looking beautiful woman with golden hair and 2 wings on her back automatically appeared inside his mind. The reason he flinched was that although the woman had a gentle-looking face, she was standing in the middle of a battlefield filled with thousands of dead bodies and was laughing like a maniac while holding the severed head of a man who had a horror-filled look on his face. What the heck? Evan shook his head and tried to shake off the image that appeared inside his mind and continued to listen to Octavius. Although he wanted to ask the old man who this Angel of Death was, he decided to wait until he finished telling him why he called the tomb a sealing ground. After capturing me, the Angel of Death brought me inside this tomb. While bringing me here, I accidentally heard her mumbling something like, "If I bring this stupid-looking bag of bones to the sealing ground before others capture their target, Master will definitely share his wisdom with me, and I will receive the enlightenment." Evan, is this Angel of Death a chuny? He opened his mouth to comment something but did not know what to say. In the end, he closed his mouth and decided to pay attention to the more important part. Sealing ground and others capture their target, huh? Evan said inwardly, and a thoughtful look appeared on his face. By the word, target, this Angel of Death must be referring to the other core evolvers who were captured and killed inside the tomb in order to make it stable. He tried to think about the word sealing but nothing appeared inside his mind. There was no recollection in his memories about the word sealing ground. Just when Evan was about to stop thinking about this matter, he remembered the thing that happened a few days ago. Could it be? His eyes narrowed, and he thought about the strange accident that happened when Gobu used his Eldritch Dimensional Rift skill in order to summon an eldritch creature. At that time, Evan received a notification telling him that Gobu's skill was being affected due to the influence of Path to Origin. After this accident, Evan thought deeply about the eldritch goblins who seemed to live inside the tomb, and in the end, he reached the conclusion that there might be an eldritch energy source somewhere inside the tomb of the ancients. And now that Octavius is saying this tomb might be a sealing ground, then. Chap 801. Could it be that this sealing has something to do with the Path to Origin or the eldritch energy source? Evan thought with a serious look on his face and found it plausible. Though there were still many things uncertain to Evan, like why Octavius's soul was left alive, what the rune inside his palm meant, and many other things, he still felt he was reaching closer to the truth. Is there anything else that you know about the tomb? Evan asked after a moment. Octavius hesitated a little but still spoke after a moment. I am not sure, but I think if you go to the center of the first layer, you will find something. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Octavius and asked in a curious voice. Why do you think I will find something if I go to the center of the first layer? Octavius looked in the direction of the first layer and said in a serious voice. As you know, this realm is stable because you used the law seals of many core evolvers and merged them with it. My law seal was also merged with this realm, and although I already lost my connection with it, I can still tell that most of the powers of the law seals that merged with this realm are targeted towards the center of the first layer, so if I am not wrong, there must be something there. Evan narrowed his eyes hearing Octavius and looked at the map that he found in the reward room. Upon looking at the map, his gaze instantly fell on the location marked with the words core altar and noticed it was somewhere around the center area of the first layer. Could it be that what Octavius just said is related to this core altar? Evan thought aloud and looked at the map. After looking at the location of the core altar for a few seconds, he looked at the second marked location on the first layer and saw the words, Time Water. I was already planning to go to the first layer to take a look at these two locations, and now after hearing Octavius's words, I am even more determined to go there. Evan put the map back inside his shadow storage and took a deep breath. freewebnovel.com He closed his eyes to concentrate on something and opened them after a moment. The second layer is far more dangerous than the first layer. During the time I was inside the cave dimension, most of the members of Team Black were killed by monsters. Evan patted the head of the wind and lightning sheep, and it started to move. Luckily, they still found some interesting places before dying that can help me break through the peak of rank 1 as soon as possible. Boom! A loud explosion reverberated in the dark, gloomy atmosphere of the second layer, and a 5-meter-tall wolf, covered in burnt dark green fur, was blasted away. In midair, the wolf howled in pain and spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with its internal organs. Rumble. Before the wolf crashed to the ground after being blasted away, the gloomy sky of the second layer started to rumble. FW shish. Suddenly, a beam of golden light tore through the dark clouds and descended towards the wolf like a spear. Sky fall. A loud voice rang out throughout the gloomy land, and the golden beam struck the green wolf right at its spine. Crack. The sound of bone cracking rang out, and boom! The wolf was planted to the ground, creating a nearly 300-meter-wide crater despite the fact that the ground of the second layer was tens of times more durable than the third layer. In the middle of the crater, the wolf's body twitched as the blood flowed out from its wide-open mouth without stopping. The wolf tried to stand up in order to escape. However, its broken spine prevented it from doing so. Evan hovered a few meters above the wolf using the shadow wings and looked at it with a wide smile on his face. He was covered in a fiery purple aura as if he were engulfed in flames, and his body was filled with many injuries. Blood dripped from his wounds and his aura appeared somewhat chaotic. Although it was not an easy fight, I can finally face and kill beginner-level rank 2 monsters without relying on shadow possession, my shadow undeads, or the Death Guardian authority. Evan muttered, with a smile on his face, and nodded his head in satisfaction. He stopped using the purple fire to buff his abilities, and the fiery purple aura that covered his body disappeared. Once the fiery purple aura covering his body disappeared, he looked at the wolf, who was still alive, and descended right at its chest, stomping hard enough to turn its heart into mush, killing it immediately. Once the wolf died, Evan took a deep breath, and his body was engulfed in white fire. The white fire seeped inside Evan's body and started to heal all of his wounds. He observed the effect of the white fire and felt Elysia's healing was better than the fire. Realizing that the white fire was not as effective as Elysia's healing, Evan stopped using it and summoned Elysia, who healed him using her skill. Although it is not as effective as Elysia's healing, it can still come in handy during an emergency situation, Evan muttered, and used the shadow resurrection on the green wolf. The shadow energy inside Evan's core moved and seeped inside the wolf's body. Soon, a 5-meter-tall black wolf rose in front of him and lowered its head. Evan looked at the wolf for a moment before a small smile appeared on his face. With this, now the number of beginner-level rank 2 shadow undeads under my command has reached 50, Evan said in a low voice, and searched the wolf's body to see if there was a monster core inside its body. It has been 10 days since Evan emerged from the cave dimension. During these 10 days, he traveled from one place to another that Team Black found, trying to increase his strength as much as possible. The second layer was far more dangerous than the third layer due to the presence of many beginner-level rank 3 monsters. With his current strength, Evan knew that if he encountered a rank 3 monster, it would be impossible for him to escape from them even with the help of his shadow undeads. So, to avoid the rank 3 monsters, he sent his shadow undeads in all directions and wisely avoided the places where he sensed rank 3 monsters. With the help of his shadow undeads, in these 15 days, Evan collected many precious items, and even the rank of his core reached 75% of the mid-level rank 1. While collecting these precious items, he was also actively hunting all the beginner-level rank 2 monsters he came across, because he knew that if he wanted to go to the third layer, he needed to create as many powerful shadow undeads as possible. Finally, Evan suddenly exclaimed in a loud voice as he looked at the green-colored monster core in his hand. I finally found the last thing that I needed. Evan held the green-colored monster core in his hand and took out 2 more similar-looking cores from his shadow storage. After taking out the 3 cores, he took off his boots and placed them on the ground. You need the following materials to evolve Boots of Voidgazer. 1. 300 grams of Dreamwave Dust. 2. 1 kg Shadow Steel. 3. 1 beginner level rank 1 Void Element Monster Core. 3 beginner level rank 1 Wind Element Monster Cores. After placing the 3 wind cores along with the Boots of Voidgazer, Evan looked inside his shadow storage and took out small chunks of black-colored material and a pouch. The black-colored material was shadow steel, which he found a few days ago in a monster cave, and the small pouch was filled with dreamweaver dust that Aqua found at the bottom of a lake. Similar to the cores, Evan placed the shadow steel in the pouch, which was filled with dreamwave dust, beside the boots of Voidgazer. The moment Evan put the 3 items beside the boots of Voidgazer, some notifications flashed before his eyes. Detected all the required evolutionary materials for boots of Voidgazer. Do you want to evolve boots of Voidgazer into a low-level rank 1 artifact? Yes. No. Evan looked at the notifications that appeared in front of him and chose yes, without hesitation. The moment Evan chose yes, the boots of Voidgazer flashed with bright purple light, forcing him to close his eyes. The boots of Voidgazer are evolving into a low-level rank 1 artifact. The moment Evan chose yes, the boots of Voidgazer flashed with blinding purple light, and all the materials that Evan placed near it turned into liquid and merged with it. Evan was forced to close his eyes because of the blinding light, but he continued to look at the boots using his spiritual senses. The boots of Voidgazer are evolving into a low-level rank 1 artifact. A few minutes passed, and slowly, the blinding light coming out of the boots started to recede. Evan opened his eyes when the light from the boots started to disappear and looked at both of the boots with anticipation. A few more minutes passed, and all the materials that turned into liquid merged with it perfectly. The boots of Voidgazer successfully evolved into a low-level rank 1 artifact. A notification flashed before Evan, and silver boots with small purple outlines appeared in front of him. Evan picked up the boots from the ground, and their details appeared in front of him. Boots of Voidgazer, low-level rank 1. These boots bestow the user with increased agility and reflexes, allowing them to change direction rapidly and perform complex acrobatics while moving swiftly. While wearing the boots, the power of all your movement-type skills will be increased by 80%. After equipping the boots, the user can use Step of Voidgazer, Void Study, and Nether Stride skills. Step of Voidgazer. When the wearer activates this skill, they gain the ability to step into the void and traverse vast distances in mere seconds, teleporting from one point to another. The maximum distance you can travel using this skill is 5,000 kilometers, and this skill can be used 4 times a day. Void Study. This skill allows you to send your spiritual senses into the void for 20 minutes a day. With the help of this skill, you can understand the mysteries of the void and turn your world essence into the conceptual energy of the void. While the skill is activated, your comprehension abilities to understand the void element will be increased by 10%. Nether Stride. Upon activation, this skill allows the user to teleport short distances within a 1-kilometer area around them. There is no limit on the usage of this skill, and it can be activated using the world essence or the conceptual energy of the user. Evan quickly looked at the details of the boots of Voidgazer and immediately noticed the changes. The control that the boots of Voidgazer gave him while moving at a fast speed increased even more. At the same time, the increase in movement-type skills rose from the previous 50 to 80%. Not only that, the power of the previous 2 skills, Step of Voidgazer and Void Study, also increased greatly. Especially the Void Study that could now increase his comprehension speed of the void element by 10%. On top of that, he received the new skill Nether Stride. At first glance, this skill looks quite normal, but after reading the details of the skill a few times, Evan finally understood just how useful this skill was. There is no limit on using this skill, so I can use it as many times as I want, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice and his lips arched upwards. Unlike his other skills like Windwalk or Flicker Step, which he can use to travel tens of kilometers instantly, Nether Stride can only be used to move within a range of 1 kilometer. But even then, it was far better than those skills because, unlike those skills, the advantage of Nether Stride was its ability to teleport its user. In the case of Windwalk or Flicker Step, the user won't be able to use these skills if they are surrounded by enemies from all sides, because no matter which direction they move, they will eventually encounter the enemy. On the other hand, Nether Stride is different because it is a skill based on teleportation. So even if the user found themselves surrounded by enemies, they could still escape from them as long as the space around them wasn't locked. Evan wore the boots of Voidgazer and tested them for a bit. After using them for a few minutes, he realized that although not much, his control over his agility definitely increased a little bit. Although its evolution is not as extravagant as Carnage that gave me the elemental bullet skill, it is still better than a normal low-level rank 1 artifact. Evan muttered in a low voice and wondered if in the future he would be able to use his void energy to teleport without any restrictions. Just when Evan was thinking about his boots, the gloomy dark sky of the second layer suddenly lit up with various lights. Evan was alarmed because of the sudden change and raised his head towards the sky, only to see the dark sky of the second layer flashing with rainbow-colored light. This light. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw the rainbow-colored light flashing in the sky and felt as if he had seen something like this before. Roar! Roar! Just when Evan was wondering what was going on, the monsters in the second layer went into a frenzy and started to roar. Evan felt goosebumps when he heard the roars of the monsters because he could feel many auras of rank 3 monsters rising in different places of the second layer. Noticing the strange behavior of the monsters and the sky illuminated by the rainbow-colored light, Evan's mind worked at full speed, and soon he remembered why he felt this scene was a bit familiar. Damn, don't tell me it's a phenomenon that only appears when a high-ranking treasure is about to be born. Evan muttered with his eyes wide open as he thought about the phenomenon that he saw in the world domain. Rumble. Just when Evan was lost in his thoughts, the ground of the second layer started to shake. Evan used his spiritual senses and immediately understood what was going on. All the powerful monsters of the second layer are on the move. In one of the areas of the second layer, a giant bird nearly 100 meters long was sleeping soundly. The bird was black in color, and a long tail that was engulfed in deep brown flames protruded from its back. Thousands of kilometers of area around the bird was burning in black fire, releasing intense heat that could instantly turn any mid-level rank 2 or below core evolver into ashes. Suddenly, the gloomy area covered in the black fire was illuminated by rainbow-colored light, alerting the sleeping bird. The bird slowly opened its deep yellow eyes and saw the sky flashing with rainbow light. Upon seeing the rainbow-colored sky, the bird immediately stood up and screeched loudly. It flapped its wings and flew towards the source of the rainbow light. Rumble. As the bird flew, the sky started to rumble, and soon, screeches of monsters resounded throughout the sky as hundreds of bird monsters ranging from beginner level rank 1 to peak rank 2 followed behind the black bird. Similar to the bird monster, other powerful monsters of the second layer also reacted upon seeing the rainbow-colored light. In a gloomy, withered forest, a giant monster that looked like a withered tree also looked at the sky and moved towards the source of the phenomenon. As the tree monster moved, hundreds of strange-looking monsters that resembled plants and flowers followed behind it. In another region, a 10-meter-tall ape covered in dark brown fur looked at the rainbow-colored sky with its deep red eyes, and similar to other monsters, it also moved towards the source of the phenomenon. Not only monsters but even the core evolvers who entered the tomb of the ancient were also attracted by the phenomenon. The second layer of the tomb was vast. But even then, all the people who were present in the second layer noticed this anomaly because the phenomenon changed the color of the sky in millions of kilometers. A phenomenon that could change the sky by millions of kilometers was definitely not normal, so people were naturally attracted to it. Most of the people who had confidence in their abilities or were moving in groups had already bypassed the third layer and were now in the second layer, so when the phenomenon appeared, other than the thousands of monsters, hundreds of groups of core evolvers also rushed towards the anomaly. Voidskar, who was still having a headache due to the misunderstanding that Evan caused, looked at the phenomenon from the entrance of a cave and his eyes blazed with greed. A phenomenon of such magnitude can only be caused by a rank 4 or above grade treasure. Voidskar muttered in a low voice and made up his mind. He took out a crystal from his storage ring and sent a message to the dragons to gather together and move towards the source of the phenomenon. Even though there were many people who were targeting him because of the misunderstanding caused by Evan, Voidskar never called his subordinates for help because he had enough confidence in his strength. However, this phenomenon was not normal. He knew that if he wanted to get his hands on the treasure causing the phenomenon, he would have to face not only the core evolvers but the monsters of the second layer as well. Although powerful, he wasn't delusional enough to think that he could face all the monsters and core evolvers alone. Moreover, he knew that many core evolvers in the second layer were not weaker than him, like Blaze, Walter, Amber, and a few more, which is why he asked the dragons to gather together and move towards the source of the phenomenon. It won't be an easy battle, Voidskar muttered in a low voice, but the faint smile on his lips indicated that he was quite excited about this event. This phenomenon is going to attract all the core evolvers of the second layer, he said, and the smile on his face turned dangerous. I hope that bastard will also be attracted by the phenomenon and will come there. Two black wings opened behind Voidskar, and with a single flap of his wings, he disappeared on the horizon. Similar to Voidskar, Blaze, Momin, Walter, Zorda, the leader of the demons, and other core evolvers also sent messages to their teammates to gather together and head towards the source of the phenomenon. In a hidden area of the second layer, Cedar looked at the rainbow-colored sky with a look of hesitation on his face. "Should I go there?" he muttered in a low voice and looked at the mountain valley in front of him. He stood there for a few minutes, and soon, the look of hesitation on his face was replaced by a look of resolution. "No, the thing I came here for is more important than the phenomenon," he said, looking at the mountain valley. "If I successfully get that thing, Grandpa should be able to recover from the injury that he suffered." After looking at the mountain valley for a few seconds, Cedar stepped forward and entered a deep cavern. "I hope the difficulty of getting that thing won't increase because of this phenomenon." Evan flew a few kilometers above the ground and soon landed at the top of a mountain peak. After landing, he took out Carnage and his vision instantly expanded due to its focus skill. Using the focus skill of Carnage in conjunction with his Hawk's Eye skill, Evan looked in all directions of the second layer. Because of his skills, he could easily see everything within an area of a few thousand kilometers. Without any problems. "The monsters and the core evolvers are all moving towards the source of the phenomenon," Evan said to himself as he watched groups of monsters and core evolvers heading towards the source of the phenomenon. Because of the phenomenon, all the monsters of the second layer were in a frenzy and the danger level of the second layer increased to a completely different level. Through his exceptional vision, Evan even saw many core evolvers who were badly injured and were running away from the group of monsters. "With my current strength, even if I go there, I don't think I will be able to get the thing that is causing this phenomenon." Evan was powerful, and he knew that with his shadow undeads and abilities, he could even escape from people like Voidskar and others who were the top core evolvers present in the Tomb of the Ancient. But no matter how powerful he was, he also knew that with his current strength, it would be impossible for him to face the groups of monsters and the core evolvers who were going towards the source of the phenomenon. His current rank was just too low to intervene in an event like this. "Only if I were at the peak of rank 1. Evan said in a slightly annoyed voice, because if he were at the peak of rank 1, he could have created mid-level rank 2 shadow undeads. With the army of tens of mid-level rank 2 shadow undeads, hundreds of beginner-level rank 2 shadow undeads, and thousands of rank 1 shadow undeads. Evan said in a dreamy voice, thinking about kicking everyone's ass using his shadow undeads. But he looked at his core and saw it was at the 75% mark of the mid-level rank 1, still quite far from reaching the peak of rank 1. "Is there any way for me to increase the RAN?" Evan was in the middle of speaking when something clicked in his mind, and his eyes opened wide. "Fu K, how could I forget about him?" Evan cursed in a low voice and slapped his forehead. "Oi, old man, stop sleeping and come out for a bit." Evan immediately called out Octavius, who was sleeping in order to preserve his energy. Octavius appeared in front of Evan with a sleepy look on his face. But his drowsiness immediately disappeared when he noticed the phenomenon in the sky. "What the?" Octavius was stunned after seeing the phenomenon and looked in the direction of the rainbow light. "The treasure that is causing this phenomenon must be rank 4 or above grade, freewebnovel.com. Rank 4 or above." Evan's heart skipped a beat when he heard Octavius's words and he gulped down his saliva. He resisted the urge he felt to head towards the source of the phenomenon and took some deep breaths. Calm down, calm down. There is still hope for you to get your hands on this treasure," Evan said to himself, then turned to Octavius. "Old man, you said you were a rank 5 alchemist, right?" Octavius stopped looking at the phenomenon and turned to Evan. "Yes, do you need my help with something?" Evan nodded his head hearing Octavius and asked the main question. "Can you create a pill or potion that can help me reach the peak of rank 1? Can you create a pill or potion that can help me reach the peak of rank 1? Hearing Evan's question, Octavius raised an eyebrow. "Why do you need a pill or potion to reach the peak of rank 1? I mean, aren't you just a clone?" Evan narrowed his eyes when he heard Octavius and he asked in a cold voice. "So what if I am a clone? Are you looking down on me because I am not a real person?" Beads of fine sweat appeared on Octavius's forehead when he saw Evan's cold expression and he quickly shook his head. No, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean to question your existence. I just asked because I don't know if a potion or pill would work on you. After all, you know you are not a real person but..." he explained hurriedly, afraid that Evan might poke his soul essence that was under his control. Evan looked at Octavius for a few seconds before he said in a plain voice. You don't have to worry about anything. Although I am just a clone, I can use all the potions and pills just like normal core evolvers. A clone that can use pills and potions to increase his rank. Octavius looked at Evan with a shocked expression, as it was the first time he had heard this kind of bullshit. Octavius had many doubts about Evan's statement, but considering that he was basically Evan's slave, he didn't dare to voice his doubts and spoke after a moment. I have tens of recipes of the pills and potions that can help you reach the peak of rank 1 in a very short amount of time. Evan's eyes instantly lit up when he heard Octavius. Can you make them for me? As long as you can give me all the ingredients and provide me with enough energy to perform alchemy, I can easily make them. Hearing Octavius, Evan looked inside his shadow storage and after a few minutes, he took out a storage ring. Look at this. I have stored all the herbs that I have inside this ring. Tell me if there are any herbs that you can use, he said while handing the storage ring to Octavius. Octavius looked inside the storage ring that Evan gave him and raised an eyebrow when he saw a small mountain of herbs. As there were thousands of herbs inside the ring, it took Octavius nearly 10 minutes to look at everything. There are enough herbs to create some of the pills and potions that I have in mind, but before that, tell me what kind of potion or pill you want, Octavius asked after inspecting the ring. I mean, some of the pills I have in mind will give a big boost to your core, and they are quite easy to make, but the side effect of these pills is that they will make the foundation of your core unstable and even the quality of your world essence will drop by a few levels. I don't want something like that. Can you make something that will not affect me negatively? Evan interrupted Octavius mid-speech as he already knew what he wanted to ask. Octavius looked at the ingredients inside the ring once again and said after a moment. If you want something without side effects, then the Beast Heart Draft is the best option. However, Octavius frowned and looked at Evan. We will need many monster cores and monster hearts to create this potion. Evan also frowned when he heard Octavius. Although the hearts of the monsters were not a problem, the cores of monsters were very rare, and even though he killed many monsters after entering the tomb, the number of cores in his possession didn't exceed 9. How many cores do you need? And what about their rank? I will need around 20 beginner level rank 1 cores. The number of cores will reduce significantly if you give me a core higher level than the beginner level rank 1, but do know that because of my current condition, I can't refine the cores that are above the peak of rank 1, so try to collect the cores that are below rank 2. 20 beginner level rank 1. Evan muttered in a low voice and looked at the 9 monster cores that he had. Among the 9 monster cores he had, 5 were of rank 2. Because of what Octavius said, Evan ignored the rank 2 cores and looked at the remaining 4 cores. 2 beginner level rank 1, 1 mid-level, and 1 peak level, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice and looked at Octavius. You can consider a peak level rank 1 core to be equivalent to 3 beginner level cores and 2 for the mid-level cores, Octavius said when he heard Evan. If we count everything, we basically have 8 beginner level rank 1 cores and still need 12 more. 12 cores, huh? Evan said to himself and looked at the groups of monsters who were running towards the source of the phenomenon in a frenzy. Before the phenomenon occurred, it would have been a bit hard to gather 12 cores in a short amount of time, but seeing the groups of monsters in all directions, Evan's lips arched upwards. It won't be difficult to gather 12 cores when there are hundreds of monsters running in all directions. You just need monster cores, right? Evan asked as his eyes started to glow with an ominous light. Seeing Evan's eyes that were looking at monsters as if they were mere cattle, Octavius gulped down his saliva and nodded his head like a chicken. Evan unfolded his shadow wings and was about to dash towards the group of monsters when he suddenly remembered something and stopped. By the way, how much time will it take you to create the potion once I provide you with enough cores? Evan was hoping to increase the rank of his core as soon as possible so that he could compete for the treasure that was causing the phenomenon. In order to gather the cores, Evan was even planning to use all of his shadow undeads, even if he had to show all of them in front of other core evolvers, but the answer that he received from Octavius made him halt his footsteps and his mind went blank. Not much, I should be able to finish the potion in around 2 days. Not much, I should be able to finish the potion in around 2 days, Octavius said in a voice filled with confidence. Wait. Evan, who was about to start a killing spree in order to collect cores, stopped and said in a hasty voice. What did you just say? Can you repeat yourself because I think I misheard you? Octavius looked at Evan in confusion and said in the same tone of voice, I think I should be able to finish the potion in around 2 days. Crack. Evan felt as if his dream of entering the Battle of Treasure with mid-level rank 2 shadow undeads shattered and his mind went blank. Are you messing with me? Evan asked while trying his best not to beat the old man. freewebnovel.com. Octavius didn't understand why Evan was angry, so he looked at him with confusion written all over his face. Seeing Octavius's confused face, Evan took some deep breaths to calm down and asked after a moment. Can't you make the potion in a few hours? I need it urgently. Sorry, but I can't. Octavius shook his head in denial and said in a helpless voice. If I were in my top condition, I could have made this potion in a matter of minutes, but you have to understand that currently I don't have a physical body, and it is not easy to refine monster cores. Unlike us, monsters turn their world essence into conceptual energy using the inheritance knowledge that they receive from their bloodline. Because of their bloodline, all the monsters have a little bit of inheritance conceptual energy inside their core the moment they reach the beginner level rank 1 from the S rank, Octavius explained. In order to create this potion, I will have to remove all traces of their conceptual energy from their cores, which is not an easy task, so it is impossible for me to make this potion in less than 2 days. Hearing Octavius's explanation, Evan's expression fell and he didn't know what to say. Seeing Evan's expression, Octavius hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still decided to speak. If you are in a hurry to increase the rank of your core, I can create other potions for you. They are far easier to create than the Beast Heart Draft, but unlike the Beast Heart Draft, these pills and potions will harm your body and core in some way. This time, when Evan heard Octavius talking about harmful potions, he didn't immediately refuse and thought about it deeply. Although he did not want to use something that would harm his body or core, he knew that if he wanted to compete for the treasure that was causing the phenomenon, he would have to increase the rank of his core. If you don't mind, can I ask you why you want to increase your rank? Evan suddenly heard Octavius's voice and saw him looking at him with a careful look as if he was afraid that Evan would lash out at him for asking the question. Evan sighed when he saw Octavius's expression and pointed towards the sky. Because of the phenomenon, he said while pointing at the sky. I want to compete for the treasure that is causing this anomaly, but with my current strength, it will be impossible for me to face the monsters and the core evolvers who will be attracted by the phenomenon, so I want to increase my rank. Octavius raised an eyebrow when he heard Evan's reason, as he didn't think Evan would be frustrated because of the treasure causing the phenomenon. Although Evan had said many times that he was a clone and different from the Shadow Monarch, in Octavius's eyes, he was still the same cold-faced bastard who destroyed his physical body and trapped him. In his memories, Evan was someone who wouldn't care about a treasure regardless of its rank, which is why he was surprised when Evan said he wanted to increase his rank so that he could compete for a treasure. Guess he is really different from him. Octavius said inwardly and shook his head with a small smile on his face. How long has it been since the phenomenon appeared in the sky? Octavius suddenly asked. Evan looked at Octavius in confusion, not understanding why he was asking this, but he still answered his question regardless. Around 40 minutes. Hearing Evan's response, Octavius looked at him with a speechless expression. What? Under Octavius's gaze, Evan felt uncomfortable so he asked while looking at him in confusion. Sigh, to think you don't even have basic knowledge about phenomena, the old man said and shook his head. Listen carefully, young man, Octavius assumed a sage-like posture and said with his hands behind his back. A phenomenon of this magnitude can only be caused by treasures that are rank 4 or above, and normally, the phenomenon appears a few days before the treasure fully matures or materializes. Do you understand? The phenomenon appears a few days before the treasure matures or materializes. Evan's eyes opened wide in shock when he heard what Octavius was saying. You mean to say? Seeing Evan's shocked look, Octavius nodded his head. Yes, since this phenomenon just appeared 40 minutes ago, the treasure that is causing this anomaly will still take 3 or 4 days to fully mature or materialize, so we have enough time to make a Beast Heart Draft for you. Evan's heartbeat quickened when he heard Octavius and his dim eyes instantly lit up. You are not joking with me, right, old man? My soul essence is under your control. Through it, you can feel whether I am lying or not. Evan didn't bother to use Octavius's soul essence to check if he was lying or not, as he already knew Octavius wouldn't dare to lie to him. He quickly thanked him for the information and flew away from the mountain range. In just a few seconds, he arrived above a group of monsters that was heading in the direction of the source of the rainbow. Colored light, and his eyes flashed with a sinister glow. "It's time to hunt," he said loudly, and a dark shadow covered the gloomy sky of the second layer. "Come out, my shadow undeads." The group of monsters that was moving forward suddenly stopped and looked towards the sky. When the group of monsters looked towards the sky, their hearts instantly turned cold as they saw hundreds of black colored monsters coming out from a giant black gate that opened in the middle of the sky and looking at them with their cold burning purple eyes. In the gloomy sky of the second layer, a ball of rainbow-colored light was shining brightly, releasing 7 different colors of the rainbow in all directions. "What do you think, Caspian?" A woman with long silver hair and blood-red eyes asked while looking at the rainbow-colored ball that was shining high in the sky. "From the energy waves that are coming out of it, I would say beginner level or mid-level rank 4, a tall man with shoulder-length black hair and brown eyes said with a pondering look on his face. The man was wearing a butler suit and the aura around him was that of a peak rank 2 core evolver. "Beginner or mid-level rank 4, huh?" Amber nodded her head and narrowed her eyes as she felt many powerful presence in her surroundings. She looked to her right side and saw an ape who was covered in brown fur, had blood-red eyes standing at the top of a mountain. Behind the ape stood hundreds of monsters ranging from beginner level rank 1 to peak of rank 2. A beginner level rank 3 monster. Amber said inwardly as she looked at the ape who was standing at the top of the mountain like an overlord. Through her spiritual senses, she could see other people as well and knew that everyone was waiting for the treasure to appear before they made their move. "It won't be easy to acquire that thing," Amber said in a low voice and sighed inwardly. "Can you guess what is that thing?" Amber asked Caspian who was standing beside her. Hearing Amber, Caspian looked at the ball of rainbow-colored light. His brown-colored eyes flashed with golden light and returned to normal after a moment. freewebnovel.com. "I am sorry, my lady. But I can't determine anything. At least, not at the moment." Caspian shook his head and said in an apologetic voice. "What do you mean by not at the moment?" Amber asked while raising an eyebrow. "The treasure just appeared a few hours ago and is still far from materializing, so I should be able to determine what it is after a day or two once it starts to take shape." "I see." Amber nodded her head hearing Caspian and looked at the far distance in front of her. Through her exceptional vision, she saw a tall man who had deep blue skin, black eyes, and a sharp horn coming out from the top of his head sitting on a rock with his eyes closed. The man was surrounded in a bloody aura and the surroundings around him seemed very heavy. As Amber looked at him, Zorda opened his eyes and looked straight at her with an indifferent look on his face. Amber wasn't surprised when she saw this and simply stopped looking at him. As she looked away from him, she noticed a few kilometers long green snake with deep yellow eyes coiled around a sharp mounting peak, looking at everyone with its predatory eyes. "Noel," Amber said inwardly as she looked at the giant snake that was coiled around the mountain. Suddenly, Amber felt something and looked behind her. Caspian followed her gaze and soon noticed a few vampires coming in their direction. In front of the group of vampires, there was a man with an arrogant expression and shoulder-length silver hair. "Here comes the simp," Caspian said inwardly when he saw Thomas and shook his head. Amber's expression remained unchanged when she saw him. She looked at him only for a brief moment before her focus shifted back to other people. Thomas's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he saw Amber's lackluster reaction, and he felt sour inside his heart. Soon he and the other vampires who followed him stopped behind Amber. Thomas signaled the vampires who came with him to stand there and went ahead. "I am glad you are fine, Amber. I was quite worried about you this entire time," Thomas said with a worried look on his face that made Caspian cringe. "Is this guy a retard?" he thought inwardly and looked at Amber who was clearly not happy hearing Thomas. Amber looked at Thomas coldly and said in a plain voice, "You don't have to worry about me. Did you forget, I am far stronger than you?" Thomas's expression turned ugly upon hearing Amber, and he opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out as he also knew that she was right and was far stronger than him. She was already at the peak of rank 2 while he was still at the mid-level rank 2. Caspian looked at Thomas's ugly expression without saying anything, but everyone could see that his eyes were filled with disdain. "By the way," Amber suddenly looked back at Thomas. "I heard the guy who stole the Enlightenment Stone and made a fool out of you is also inside the tomb. Did you meet him?" Thomas's mouth twitched uncontrollably when he heard Amber, and his hatred for Evan resurfaced. Most people only knew that Evan and Cedar had stolen the Enlightenment Stone, but Amber's information network was quite big, so she knew that other than the Enlightenment Stone, Evan even fooled Arden and others and took away their storage rings as well. My people are still searching for him. Once they find him, I will make him beg for mercy, Thomas said in a voice filled with certainty. Amber didn't say anything hearing Thomas, but inwardly, she just shook her head and felt this guy was too naive. Although she didn't meet Evan herself, she was sure that someone who could fool and safely escape from rank 4 evolvers like Arden and Solara wouldn't be a simple guy. Just when Amber was lost in her thoughts. Roar. Screech. She heard a loud dragon roar and the painful screech of a bird. She looked in the direction of the sound and saw a giant dragon covered in deep purple scales, fighting against a black bird covered in dark brown fire. Voidscar. Amber raised an eyebrow in surprise when she saw the giant dragon and wondered why he was fighting against a rank 3 monster. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want me to convert any series, you can recommend me in the comments.